Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto became the Hollow Emperor of Bleach and fall in love with Rukia and Harribel. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Dimensional Rift. Pain lanced through Naruto's body as reality itself seemed to tear around him. The rogue Otsutsuki's final desperate jutsu had ripped a hole not just in space but in the fabric between dimensions. Brilliant colors Naruto had never imagined possible flashed across his vision, ultraviolet, infrared, colors with no names in any human language, as he tumbled through nothingness. "Kurama!" Naruto shouted into the void of his mindscape. "What's happening?" The massive fox's voice came distorted, as if speaking through turbulent water. "The dimensional barrier is collapsing. That bastard's jutsu was meant to escape, not fight. We're being pulled somewhere different from any plane I've sensed before." Naruto felt his body stretching, compressing, twisting in ways that should have torn him apart. Only the extraordinary regenerative abilities granted by his Uzumaki heritage and Kurama's chakra kept him from disintegrating entirely. The gold glow of 6 paths. Sage mode flickered erratically around him as he fought to maintain control. "Can we get back?" Naruto gasped, feeling as if his very atoms were being unraveled and rewoven. "Focus on survival first," Kurama growled. "Something's changing. My chakra feels different. Be ready for anything." The void suddenly collapsed into a single point of darkness, then exploded outward. Naruto felt himself hurled through final layers of resistance before crashing onto something that felt like solid ground. The impact drove air from his lungs and sent pain radiating through his already traumatized body. For several minutes, he could only lie still, focusing on breathing. Each inhale brought strange, thin air into his lungs, air that felt simultaneously sparse yet somehow rich with unfamiliar energy. His first careful exhale emerged visible, a faint blue mist that dissipated slowly. "What the hell?" he muttered, watching his breath curl away like smoke in winter, except it wasn't cold. The air felt neutral, neither warm nor cool, as if temperature was an afterthought in this place. Naruto pushed himself to his knees, then to his feet, swaying slightly. The landscape around him defied comprehension at first glance. Endless white sand stretched to the horizon, broken occasionally by strange, crystalline tree-like formations that gleamed under the light of a crescent moon suspended in an eternal night sky. No stars adorned the darkness above, only that single, unmoving moon casting pale blue light across the barren desert. He reached instinctively for his chakra and found it responding, but strangely. It flowed more freely than ever before, yet with a different quality, less physical, more ethereal. When he channeled it to his hand, instead of the usual blue glow, it manifested as golden light with crimson edges. Swirling with patterns reminiscent of both his normal chakra and Kurama's influence, yet fundamentally transformed. "Kurama, you feeling this?" Naruto asked, focusing inward. The fox's massive form materialized in his mindscape, but something had changed. Kurama's orange fur now shimmered with an inner light, and patterns like constellations seemed to drift across it. His eyes, normally sharp and predatory, now contained swirling galaxies of crimson and gold. "This place, it's a spirit realm," Kurama said, his voice reverberating differently. "My essence is closer to my true nature here. I'm not constrained by the physical laws of our world. And neither are you, in a sense." "Spirit realm, you mean like the Pure Land? Are we dead?" Naruto asked, a chill running down his spine despite the temperature-neutral air. "No. This is something else. Not the afterlife of our world, but a separate plane where spirits exist naturally. I can sense hunger. This place is defined by hunger and emptiness." Naruto turned slowly, taking in the desolate landscape again. Now that Kurama mentioned it, there was a persistent hollow feeling. In the atmosphere, a sense of yearning so profound it seemed woven into the very fabric of reality. "I don't sense any natural energy to gather," Naruto observed, attempting to enter sage mode and finding the process altered. Instead of drawing energy in from his surroundings, his own chakra seemed to resonate with the environment, creating a different kind of harmony. But something's responding anyway. His skin began to glow with golden light, but instead of the usual markings of sage mode, luminescent patterns like flowing calligraphy appeared across his exposed skin. They weren't quite seals or symbols he recognized. Yet they felt somehow right. Your chakra is adapting, Kurama observed. In this realm, spiritual energy dominates over physical energy. Your body itself might be more concept than substance here. Well, it still hurts like a real body, Naruto grimaced, rubbing his shoulder where he'd landed. As he did, he noticed his clothing had changed during the transition. His standard shinobi gear had transformed into an outfit reminiscent of his sage mode attire, but with alterations, flowing robes of midnight blue with orange and golden flame patterns curling along the edges. A Haori-like jacket hung over his shoulders, bearing spiral patterns that seemed to subtly shift when viewed from different angles. A distant howl drew his attention, an unearthly sound that resonated with pain and hunger. It was followed by another, then several more, creating a chorus of primal yearning that echoed across the desert. What was that? Naruto whispered, instinctively dropping into a defensive stance. The natives, I presume, Kurama replied grimly. I sense many entities in this realm, all of them bound by that same emptiness. Be on guard, we don't know the rules here. Naruto nodded, creating a shadow clone to scout ahead while he continued to acclimate to the strange environment. The clone formation felt different, his chakra seemingly had to be convinced to manifest as physical form, requiring additional focus. When the clone appeared, it shimmered slightly at the edges, as if not quite solid. Weird, both Narutos commented simultaneously. The original remained in place, continuing to test his abilities while the clone bounded forward with enhanced speed toward a cluster of crystal formations in the distance. The movement felt lighter, almost effortless, as if gravity had less hold in this realm. After about 10 minutes of experimentation, Naruto had confirmed several things. His basic ninjutsu worked but manifested differently. Rasengan formed more easily but appeared as a swirling orb of golden light with black and crimson energy spiraling within it. His sensory abilities extended much further, allowing him to detect what elk-like thousands of entities scattered across the vast desert, most distant, but a few moving in his general direction. The shadow clone's memories suddenly rushed back as it dispelled itself, not from damage, but by choice after spotting something approaching from behind a crystalline formation. Naruto spun toward the direction his clone had been exploring. The memories showed a small, childly figure with a cracked skull mask observing him from behind one of the crystal trees. Not overtly hostile, but definitely curious. Hello, Naruto called out, keeping his stance non-threatening while remaining alert. I know you're there. I'm not looking for trouble. Silence answered him for several long seconds before a small voice responded. Are you a new kind of hollow? Nell hasn't seen one like you before. A tiny figure emerged from behind the crystal formation, a child with short green hair and a large crack running across a partial skull mask that covered the top of her head. She wore a simple green gown that was tattered at the edges. Most striking was the crimson line that ran across her face beneath wide, curious eyes. I'm not sure what a hollow is, Naruto answered honestly, crouching down to appear less intimidating. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm not from around here. What's your name? The child approached cautiously, studying him with surprising intensity for one so young. Nell too. Are you lost? Hueco Mundo is dangerous for those who don't know their way around. Especially now that Los Noches is broken and everyone is fighting. Hueco Mundo. Is that what this place is called? Naruto glanced around at the endless desert. Something about the child's spiritual signature felt unusual, powerful but fractured somehow, as if containing multiple contradictory natures. Nell nodded emphatically. Yep, home of the hollows. If you're not a hollow or an Arankar, then what are you? Nell can tell you're not a regular Shinigami. I'm a shinobi, a ninja from the Hidden Leaf Village. Naruto explained, realizing these terms likely meant nothing to her. I was fighting a powerful enemy, and his final attack sent me here, wherever here is. What are hollows and Shinigami? Nell's eyes widened. You really aren't from here at all. She tapped the fragment of skull mask on her head. Hollows are spirits with holes in their hearts, who hunger always. Nell is an Arankar, a hollow who removed their mask to gain Shinigami powers. And Shinigami are the ones with black robes and swords who purify hollows and send good spirits to Soul Society. Naruto absorbed this information, connecting it with what Kurama had sensed about this realm's nature. So this is some kind of afterlife. A world of spirits, sort of. Nell rocked back on her heels. But it's the bad afterlife. Good spirits go to Soul Society. Hollows are spirits who stayed too long in the human world, or had regrets, or were eaten by other hollows. Eaten, Naruto repeated, disturbed by the casual way she mentioned it. Nell nodded solemnly. Hollows always hunger. They eat other spirits to try to fill the emptiness, but it never works for long. She studied him more carefully. But you feel different. Your spirit pressure doesn't feel empty like a hollow or clean like a Shinigami. It's warm and bright, but with something big and scary inside too. Naruto couldn't help but smile at her surprisingly accurate assessment. Yeah, that sounds about right. I have a friend inside me, a very powerful spirit fox named Kurama. A fox. Nell's eyes lit up with childlike excitement. Can Nell meet him? Nell likes animals. Quote, I am not an animal, Kurama growled indignantly within Naruto's mindscape. He's a bit grumpy, Naruto chuckled. Maybe later, when we figure out more about where we are and how to. His words cut off as his enhanced senses detected several powerful presences approaching rapidly, hungrier, more malevolent than Nell's fractured but fundamentally non-threatening aura. Nell, something's coming, he warned, standing to face the new threat. The child's expression changed instantly from curious to frightened. Those are bad hollows. They've been hunting Nell since everything broke. We need to hide. Before Naruto could respond, 3 figures materialized from the darkness with a sound like static electricity. Each bore some variation of a white maw, sk and a hole through their torso, one resembling a mantis with scythe-like arms, another a massive bull with razor-sharp horns, and the third a serpentine creature with multiple heads. Well, the mantis-like hollow hissed. Its voice distorted and echoing. The little Arankar runt has found a friend. And a strange one at that. Your spiritual pressure is unusual. Not Shinigami, not Arankar, not hollow. What a fascinating specimen you'll make. Naruto stepped forward, positioning himself between Nell and the hollows. I don't want trouble, but if you're threatening this child, you'll have to deal with me first. The bull hollow pawed at the sand, releasing a bellowing laugh. It speaks as if it has a choice. Do you have any idea what you've wandered into, strange one? This is Hueco Mundo after the fall of Aizen. There are no rules anymore, only power and hunger. And we hunger, the serpentine hollow added, its multiple heads weaving hypnotically. The child has evaded us for weeks. Her residual espada spiritual pressure will make a fine meal. And you smell delicious. Different, full of life and something ancient. Nell tugged at Naruto's robe. Run, they're Ijuka's class hollows, too strong. Naruto gave her a reassuring smile. It's okay, Nell, I'm pretty strong too. He turned back to the hollows, his expression hardening. Last chance to walk away. I don't know much about this world yet, but I've fought creatures of hatred and hunger before. The mantis hollow's only response was to lunge forward, side arms slashing toward Naruto's throat with blinding speed. In the human world, such an attack might have been challenging to track. Here, with his adapted senses and the strange responsiveness of his chakra become spiritual pressure, Naruto simply leaned aside. The blade-like arm passing harmlessly through the space where his head had been. Too slow, he commented, before delivering a palm strike to the hollow's midsection that sent it flying. Backward into one of the crystal trees, which shattered with a sound like breaking bells. The bull hollow charged immediately afterward, its horns lowering to impale. Naruto allowed golden energy to flow into his hand, forming a Rasengan that glowed with unnatural brilliance in the moonlight of Hueco Mundo. Rasengan, he called, driving the spiraling sphere into the charging hollow's mask. Instead of the usual grinding impact, the Rasengan seemed to phase partially through physical matter, disrupting the very spiritual structure of the hollow. Cracks spread across its mask, glowing with golden light from within before the entire creature disintegrated into particles of spirit energy. The serpentine hollow froze, its multiple heads drawing back in surprise. What are you? It hissed, genuine fear replacing its earlier predatory confidence. Naruto stood calmly, golden energy still swirling around his hand. Like I said, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, a shinobi from the Hidden Leaf. And I don't appreciate bullies. Regardless of which world they're from. The Mantis Hollow recovered from its impact, chitinous armor cracked and leaking dark energy. Impossible to defeat an Ijukas so easily. Unless, its compound eyes seemed to widen. Are you one of them? The royal family. Before Naruto could question what it meant, the mantis unleashed a concentrated beam of red energy from its mouth, a Sero. Though Naruto didn't yet know the term, acting on instinct, he channeled chakra to counter, and what emerged surprised even him. A barrier of golden chains materialized before him, reminiscent of his mother's special technique but transformed by this realm's nature. The chains caught the energy beam and absorbed it, glowing brighter before dissolving. Nell gasped behind him. Those chains. They look like Shinigami Kido, but different. The Mantis Hollow turned to its serpentine companion. Retreat. This is no ordinary intruder. He has power like the old ones. Both remaining hollows vanished with the same static sound, leaving only disturbed sand where they had stood. Naruto relaxed slightly, letting the golden energy dissipate from his hands. He turned to Nell, who was staring at him with awe. "You're super strong," she exclaimed, bouncing on her toes excitedly. Nell hasn't seen anyone beat Ijukas that easily since the Espada. "Thanks," Naruto scratched the back of his head with a sheepish smile, a gesture unchanged across dimensions. "To be honest, my techniques are working differently here. It feels like my chakra, my energy, is connecting directly with these creatures' essence rather than just their physical form." Nell tilted her head curiously. "That's because hollows are made of spirit particles. Everything in Hueco Mundo is made of spirit particles. Physical attacks only work if you have spirit energy in them. That explains why it feels so different," Naruto mused. He glanced in the direction the hollows had fled. "They mentioned something about a royal family. Do you know what that means?" Nell's expression clouded. Nell doesn't know much about that. There are old stories about the first hollows who were very powerful. Some rank are used to talk about a hollow king from ancient times, before the Shinigami became organized. But Nell thought those were just scary bedtime stories. "Interesting," Kurama commented in Naruto's mind. "This realm has its own history and hierarchy. We should learn more." Naruto nodded in agreement, then realized Nell couldn't hear Kurama. "My friend thinks we need to learn more about this place. Nell, is there somewhere safe we can go? Somewhere you can tell me more about Hueco Mundo?" The green-haired child considered for a moment, then nodded. "Nell knows a hiding place. Nell and her brothers used to stay there before they got separated in the big fights." "Brothers?" Naruto asked, following as Nell began leading him across the sands. Dondochaka and Peshi. They're Nell's brothers and protectors. We got separated when the bad hollows started fighting over Las Noches after Lord Aizen left and the Espada fell." A sadness crept into her voice. "Nell's been looking for them. But there's lots of fighting everywhere now. Who's Aizen? And what are Espada?" Naruto asked, continuing to gather information as they traversed the seemingly endless desert. As they walked, Elle explained, in her childlike but surprisingly informative way, about Sosuke Aizen, the Shinigami who had conquered Hueco Mundo and created an army of Arankar. She described the Espada, the 10 most powerful Arankar who served as Aizen's generals, and how everything had fallen into chaos after Aizen's defeat by a Shinigami with orange hair. So now all the powerful hollows and Arankar are fighting to control Las Noches. Nell concluded as they approached what appeared to be a small cave entrance hidden beneath a fallen crystal formation. Some want to continue Lord Aizen's plan to make the Soul King's palace. Others want to go back to the old ways of just hunting and eating. And some want to hide and be left alone, like Nell. The cave opened into a surprisingly cozy space. Various scavenged items, tattered cushions, broken pieces of furniture from Las Noches, and what appeared to be human world items that had somehow found their way to Hueco Mundo, had been arranged to create a makeshift home. "This is Nell's secret base," she announced proudly. "No bad hollows know about it." Naruto smiled at her enthusiasm despite the grim circumstances. "It's great, Nell." He sat cross-legged on a cushion, taking the opportunity to center himself and properly communicate with Kurama. Closing his eyes, he entered his mindscape, which had also transformed in this new environment. Instead of the usual sewer become meadow. He found himself in a vast space that resembled Hueco Mundo's landscape but overlaid with elements of Konoha. Crystal trees grew alongside familiar oaks, and the white sand was interspersed with grass and flowing water. Kurama sat before him, his massive form radiating that new celestial quality. "This realm is fascinating," the fox said without preamble. "It exists as a counterbalance to what the child called soul society. A realm of order versus a realm of chaos. Light versus shadow. Fullness versus emptiness. Kind of like the balance of yin and yang," Naruto suggested, walking closer to his partner. "Precisely. And we exist outside their system entirely, which explains the reactions we received. Your chakra, especially infused with my power and the Six Paths energy, is something entirely foreign to this world's metaphysical structure." Naruto frowned thoughtfully. "Those hollows seemed scared after they saw what I could do. They mentioned a royal family. Yes, I suspect there's more history here than the child knows. Ancient powers that shaped this realm." Kurama's tail swished behind him. "What concerns me is whether we can return to our world. The dimensional tear wasn't a controlled technique, it was chaotic, desperate." "Do you think there's a way back?" Naruto asked, voicing the concern that had lingered since their arrival. "I don't know," Kurama admitted, "but if there is, it will require understanding this world's spiritual mechanics better. For now, we adapt and survive. This wouldn't be the first impossible situation you've faced, Kit." Naruto grinned at the fox's gruff encouragement. "You're right, and I can't abandon Nell and others who might need help. This place is in chaos, reminds me of the shinobi world during the war. Just be cautious," Kurama warned. "We don't know all the players or the rules yet. That child may seem innocent, but she possesses fragmented power beyond what her appearance suggests. And those were merely mid-level predators we encountered. I sense far more powerful entities in this realm." "I will," Naruto promised, before leaving his mindscape, and opening his eyes to find Nell watching him curiously. "Were you talking to your fox friend?" she asked immediately. "Nell saw your whisker marks glowing." Naruto touched his cheek in surprise. "Yeah, I was. He says this world is very interesting, but we need to learn more about it." Nell nodded sagely, as if this were the most natural response. "Nell can teach you about Hueco Mundo. Nell knows lots of things." She paused, then added with childlike directness, "But Nell is hungry first. Do you eat?" "Most new hollows are always hungry, but you don't seem hungry like them." The mention of food made Naruto realize he hadn't considered such basics. Did he need to eat in this spiritual realm? His stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, answering the question. "I guess I do still get hungry," he laughed. "What do you eat here? I don't see any plants or animals." A concerning thought struck him. "You don't eat other hollows, do you?" Nell shook her head quickly. "Nell doesn't eat other hollows. That's what bad hollows do. Arankar don't need to eat souls anymore." She scurried to the back of the cave and returned with what appeared to be fruit, except they were crystalline, glowing faintly with internal light. "These grow on the crystal trees, but only special ones that are hard to find. They're yummy and fill up spirit energy." She handed one to Naruto. The fruit felt cool to the touch and weighed less than it appeared it should. When he bit into it cautiously, it dissolved partially into spirit particles that tingled pleasantly as they were absorbed, while leaving a solid core with a sweet, indescribable flavor unlike anything he'd tasted before. "This is actually pretty good," he said with surprise, taking another bite. Nell beamed, already halfway through her own crystal fruit. Nell knows all the best places to find them. It's why Nell hasn't needed to go back to being. She trailed off, suddenly seeming troubled. Naruto noticed the shift in her mood. "Nell, what's wrong?" The child shook her head. "Nothing. Nell is just sad about losing her brothers." She clearly wasn't sharing something, but Naruto decided not to press. Whatever secrets this strange child Arankar harbored, she had been nothing but helpful so far. After they finished eating, Nell insisted on drawing a map of Hueco Mundo in the sand on the cave floor. Her childish illustrations were surprisingly detailed, showing the massive fortress of Las Noches at the center, various territories controlled by powerful hollow factions, and dangerous areas where the barrier between worlds was thin. "And this," she said, pointing to a region far from Las Noches, is the Forest of Manos. It's where the really big hollows live before they become Ijukas. Nell doesn't go there anymore. What about Soul Society? Naruto asked. You mentioned it earlier. Is there a way to go there from here? Nell nodded. Shinigami can open gates between worlds. And Arankar can make Garganta, Big M. Both portals to the human world are Soul Society. Nell used to be able to. She stopped again, that same troubled expression crossing her face. Nell has seen others do it. Naruto filed away this information. The ability to create portals between worlds might eventually provide a way home, though it sounded different from the dimensional tear that had brought him here. What about these? He asked, pointing to several X marks Nell had made in various locations. Those are where Nell has seen weird spirit pressure recently, she explained. Like tears in the air that feel cold and wrong. Bad hollows come out of them sometimes, ones that feel different. Naruto exchanged a mental glance with Kurama. Could these be related to how they arrived? When did these start appearing? After Lord Aizen lost, Nell said. Nell thought maybe they were something he made, but they're getting bigger and more scary. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant sound, part howl, part scree. ECH, that made the crystal fragments in the cave ceiling vibrate ominously. What was that? Naruto asked, immediately alert. Nell's eyes widened with fear. A Vasto Lord, the strongest kind of hollow before becoming an Arankar. They almost never come to this part of Hueco Mundo. She grabbed Naruto's hand. We should hide deeper or leave. They can sense spirit pressure really far. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, extending his senses. Indeed, a massive spiritual pressure was moving in their general direction, far more potent than the Ijukas they'd encountered earlier. But there was something strange about it. Something almost familiar. It feels wrong, he murmured. Not just powerful, but corrupted somehow. It reminds me of the tainted chakra we encountered during the war, Kurama observed. When Kageyas will corrupted shinobi and transformed them. Another screech split the air, closer this time. Nell tugged urgently at Naruto's robe. Please. Nell is scared. Naruto stood decisively. We need to move, but I also need to see what that is. If it's connected to how I got here, it might be important. He created 2 shadow clones, which now formed more stably than his first attempt. You two, secure the area and be ready to create a diversion if needed. The clones nodded and darted out of the cave. Naruto turned to Nell. Is there a higher place nearby where we could observe safely? Somewhere that might mask our presence? Nell hesitated, then pointed toward a tall crystal formation visible in the distance. The reflecting spire. It bounces spirit pressure around, making it hard to find the source. Nell hides there sometimes when big scary hollows come. Perfect, Naruto said. Let's go. They exited the cave, moving swiftly across the sands toward the towering crystal formation. As they ran, Naruto noted how his body responded to this world's strange physics. He could move faster, jump higher, as if the spiritual nature of the realm imposed fewer limitations than the physical world. They reached the reflecting spire in minutes, a massive crystal that rose hundreds of feet into the air, its faceted surfaces capturing and distorting the moonlight. Nell led him to a small opening near its base, which expanded into a hollow space within the crystal itself. From inside, they could see in all directions through the translucent walls, which bent and refracted light and spiritual pressure alike. Nell comes here to look for her brothers sometimes, she explained quietly. You can see far away, but others can't sense you well. Naruto nodded, focusing his attention on the massive spiritual pressure that was now moving methodically across the desert. Through the refracting crystal, he could finally see its source, and the sight made his breath catch. The creature was vaguely humanoid but twisted, its white hollow mask fractured to reveal a face that seemed to shift between human and monstrous features. Its body was wrapped in red, black and red energy that resembled both the Shinigami's robes and something else, something that triggered recognition in Naruto's memory. That looks like corrupted chakra, he whispered. Like what happened when shinobi were exposed to the god tree's influence. The hollow moved with unnatural grace, occasionally stopping to thrust its hand into the air, where it would tear open a small rift that glowed with the same sickly energy that surrounded it. It would peer into the rift, then close it with apparent frustration. Nell has never seen a hollow like that, Nell whispered, pressing close to Naruto's side. It feels like a Vasto Lord, but, wrong. And what's it doing? I think, Naruto said slowly, it might be looking for a way to another world. My world. As if hearing his words despite the distance. The corrupted hollow suddenly turned toward the reflecting spire. Its masked fragment parted in a grotesque smile, and it raised one clawed hand toward them. Found you, a voice echoed, somehow projecting directly into their minds. The anomaly. The bridge walker. At last, it found us, Nell squeaked in terror. But that's impossible in the reflecting spire. The CR. Eacher began moving toward them with frightening speed, covering ground faster than seemed possible even for the enhanced movement Naruto had experienced. Kit, that thing is dangerous, Kurama warned. It's not just a powerful hollow, it's been infused with something from our world. I can sense fragments of chakra in its spiritual pressure. Nell, stay here, Naruto ordered, preparing to exit the crystal formation. I need to confront this thing, find out what it knows. No, Nell grabbed his robe with surprising strength. It's too dangerous. Even Espada were careful around Vasto Lords. Naruto gently but firmly removed her hand. I'll be careful, but I need answers, and that thing seems connected to how I got here. He smiled reassuringly. Remember how easily I handled those other hollows. I'm stronger than I look. Before Nell could protest further, Naruto slipped out of the crystal formation and stood in the open, facing the approaching corrupted hollow. He allowed High's full spiritual pressure to manifest, no longer restraining it as he had instinctively done since arriving. Golden energy erupted around him, taking on aspects of both his six paths sage mode and some thing new, something responding to this world's unique spiritual environment. The corrupted hollow stopped 100 yards away, its twisted masked face regarding Naruto with malevolent curiosity. Up close, the wrongness of it was even more apparent. Its hollow hole seemed to leak dark energy, and veins of red chakra-like power pulsed beneath its white skin. What are you? Naruto called out, his voice carrying across the distance. And why do I sense chakra within you? The creature's smile widened unnaturally. Bridge Walker, it hissed, its voice still bypassing normal sound to resonate directly in Naruto's mind. Seed of the new convergence. You ask what I am. I am what comes when worlds bleed into one another. I am opportunity. It raised its arms, and the air around it distorted. The barriers weaken, the dimensions strain. First one crossover, then another, then a flood. The master calls, and I answer. Master, who sent you? Naruto demanded, preparing to defend himself as the creature's spiritual pressure intensified. The one who hungers for all worlds. The one who was sealed beyond space and time. The mother of chakra, the devourer of souls. The hollow's next words sent ice through Naruto's veins. Kagaya stirs once more, Bridge Walker. And this time, all realms will feed her awakening. Naruto's shock nearly cost him as the creature suddenly launched forward, varying the remaining distance in an eye blink. Only his battle-honed reflexes allowed him to dodge the strike. Claws of condensed spiritual pressure that left gouges in the sand where he had stood. Impossible, Naruto growled, leaping backward to create space. Kagaya was sealed by me and Sasuke. The dimensional prison was absolute. The corrupted hollow laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Prisons erode, seals weaken, and hunger endures. It struck again, this time firing a Sero that had been contaminated with what unmistakably resembled the truth-seeking orb's negative energy. Naruto countered with a Rasenshuriken that had transformed in this realm, the spinning blades now composed of golden spirit chains that cut through the corrupted Sero and continued toward the hollow. He creature evaded with unnatural flexibility, its body bending in ways that defied anatomy. Yes, it crowed, strong, a worthy vessel for the coming convergence. I don't know what you're talking about, Naruto shot back, forming chakra clones that now manifested with perfect stability, but if Kagaya is somehow involved, then you're a threat to every world, not just mine. 5 Narutos rushed the hollow from different angles, each wielding a different variation of Rasengan adapted to this realm's spiritual mechanics. The creature fought with surprising skill, dispatching 3 clones with precise strikes before the remaining 2 landed glancing blows that tore away portions of its corrupted form. Black ichor that was neither blood nor spiritual energy sprayed from its wounds, sizzling when it struck the sand. Rather than showing pain, the hollow seemed delighted. "You understand nothing, Bridge Walker," it taunted. "This is merely the beginning. Even now, more tears form between worlds. More essence leaks through. Hueco Mundo, Soul Society, the world of the living, all will serve as vessels for her return." It suddenly thrust both hands forward, not attacking Naruto direct L. Why but tearing open a larger rift in the air beside them. Through the opening, Naruto caught a glimpse of what appeared to be a forest, not the white crystal trees of Hueco Mundo, but actual green vegetation. The human world, perhaps. "Watch," the hollow commanded, plunging one hand into the rift and pulling forth something that made Naruto's blood run cold, a small fragment of what was unmistakably the god tree's root. "No," Naruto whispered, as the creature pressed the root fragment into its own hollow hole. The reaction was immediate and horrifying. The corrupted hollow's form bulged and distorted, power surging around it as the god tree fragment integrated with its spiritual structure. Its mask cracked further, revealing an eye that was neither hollow nor human, but Rinne Sharingan. "Naruto!" Kurama roared within him. "End this now. That thing is becoming a bridge itself, a conduit between our world's chakra and this world's spiritual energy." Understanding the danger, Naruto didn't hesitate. He entered a complete six-paths sage mode, modified by this realm's nature but still accessing the fundamental power Hagoromo had granted him. Golden light erupted from his body as truth-seeking orbs formed behind him, though here they manifested as spheres of concentrated spiritual pressure ringed with sealing formulas that glowed with unearthly light. "I don't know how parts of my world are bleeding into this one," Naruto said, his voice resonating with power, "but I won't let Kagaya's influence spread here or anywhere else." The corrupted hollow, still adapting to the god tree fragment, regarded him with its mismatched eyes, one the void-like socket of a hollow, the other the hypnotic pattern of the Rinne Sharingan. "Too late, Bridge Walker. The seed is planted. The convergence begins. Kill this vessel if you wish, it changes nothing." Naruto brought his hands together, forming a seal that channeled both Six Paths chakra and this world's spiritual energy. The truth-seeking orbs responded, arranging themselves in a pattern around the corrupted hollow. "Six Paths. Sealing Temple," Naruto called out, adapting the technique Hagoromo had taught him for this new threat. The orbs expanded, creating barriers of golden light that enclosed the hollow in a pyramid-like structure. Sealing formulas flowed from Naruto's hands, across the ground, and up the barriers, binding and constraining the creature's corrupted power. The hollow thrashed against its prison, its form beginning to destabilize under the competing influences of hollow nature, spiritual pressure, chakra, and the god tree fragment. "You seal one breach, while 1,000 more form," it shrieked, its mental voice becoming distorted. "She comes. The hunger that devours worlds approaches." With a final surge of power, Naruto completed the seal. The pyramid of light contracted rapidly, compressing the corrupted hollow into a sphere of contained energy before shrinking to a point and vanishing with a sound like a distant bell. Naruto fell to one knee, the exertion of adapting such a powerful technique to this realm's different metaphysical laws taking its toll. The golden aura around him dimmed but didn't disappear entirely. Nell emerged cautiously from the reflecting spire, approaching with wide, awestruck eyes. That was amazing. Nell has never seen power like that, not even from Lord Aizen or the Primera Espada. Naruto rose slowly, his expression troubled despite the victory. "That thing was wrong, Nell. It wasn't just a hollow. It had been corrupted by something from my world, something very dangerous." "What was it talking about?" Nell asked, staring at the empty space where the sealing had occurred. "Convergence and a mother of chakra. A threat I thought was contained," Naruto said grimly. "A being of immense power who once tried to enslave my entire world. If what that hollow said is true, parts of her power are somehow leaking between dimensions. The dimensional prison may be weakening," Kurama suggested gravely. "Or perhaps when that Otsutsuki tore open the barrier to escape, he inadvertently created pathways between multiple dimensions, not just ours and this one." "Either way," Naruto said, both to Kurama and Nell, "we have a serious problem. Those tears in space that you've been seeing, Nell, they're probably connected to all this." Nell nodded solemnly. Will more scary hollows like that one come? I don't know, Naruto admitted. But I need to learn more about this world, about these rifts, and about how the barriers between dimensions work here. And to do that, I'll need to understand the power structures of Hueco Mundo better. He looked toward the distant horizon where, according to Nell's map, the fortress of Las Noches stood. You said there's fighting over who will control Hueco Mundo now. Maybe it's time I met some of these faction leaders. Nell looked alarmed. That's dangerous. The strong Urankar and Hollows are all fighting each other. They'll attack you too. Naruto smiled confidently. Sometimes the best way to stop a war is to introduce a new power that none of the existing sides can ignore. If these rifts are appearing throughout Hueco Mundo, then everyone here is at risk, not just from each other, but from whatever is coming through from my world. He crouched down to Nell's level. Will you help me, Nell? I need a guide who knows this world, its politics, and its dangers. The child hesitated, clearly torn between fear and her growing trust in Naruto. Finally, she nodded. Nell will help, but we should find Nell's brothers first. They know lots of things too, and they're good at hiding and watching. That sounds like a plan, Naruto agreed, standing again. Where should we start looking for them? Nell pointed toward a region of particularly dense crystal formations. They were heading that way when we got separated. It's close to what used to be Tear Harribel's territory. She was the Trace Espada, the Water One. Harribel, Naruto repeated, committing the name to memory. Is she one of the faction leaders now? Nell thinks so, the child said uncertainly. She was the only female Espada. And she was very strong but not mean like most of them. She had 3 Lady Fracken who followed her everywhere. Sounds like someone worth meeting, Naruto mused. Alright, Nell, let's head that way, look for your brothers. And see if we can learn more about this Harribel and the current state of things. As they set off across the endless white desert, Naruto couldn't shake the news feeling that the corrupted Hollow's appearance had given him. If Kagaya's influence was somehow reaching this world, if the dimensional barriers were weakening, then the threat went beyond just finding a way home. 2 worlds, perhaps more, were at risk. And somehow, he had become the bridge between them, a position that carried both opportunity and terrible danger. The crescent moon of Hueco Mundo hung unchanged above them as they traveled, its light casting long shadows across the sand. In the distance, something howled, a normal Hollow's cry this time, hungry but not corrupted. The wind picked up, carrying grains of spirit particle sand that glittered like tiny stars before settling again. Naruto adjusted the Haori-like jacket that had formed during his transition to this world, the spiral patterns shifting subtly in the moonlight. Beside him, Nell chattered about her brothers and the games they used to play in the desert, her childlike resilience asserting itself after the terror of the corrupted Hollow's appearance. Despite the unfamiliarity of this world, despite the ominous threat looming in the cracks between dimensions, Naruto felt a familiar determination settling into his bones. This world might not be his, but its people, even the strange hollow spirits, deserved protection from whatever was coming. I wonder what Sasuke would make of all this, he muttered to himself with a small smile. He'd probably brood silently for an hour, then say something cryptically profound and teleport away, Kurama replied with a mental snort. Naruto laughed, causing Nell to look up at him curiously. What's funny? Just thinking about a friend from home, Naruto explained. Someone who was very good at looking serious while figuring things out. Nell hopes you find a way home eventually, she said with surprising sincerity. But Nell is glad you're here now. Naruto smiled down at the strange child Urankar who had become his first friend in this strange new world. Me too, Nell, me too. They continued toward the crystal forest, the first steps in what would become a journey to understand, and perhaps one day rule, the fractured realm of Hueco Mundo. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Strange New World. Crystalline dust pirouetted through the air, catching Hueco Mundo's eternal moonlight in microscopic prisms. Naruto extended his palm, watching as the luminescent chi particles settled on his skin before dissolving into his spiritual body. 3 days had passed since his arrival in this desolate realm, or what felt like 3 days, as time itself seemed a nebulous concept here. The sand is alive, he murmured, fascination overriding his weariness. Nell, skipping several paces ahead, spun around with childlike energy. Everything in Hueco Mundo is alive and not alive at the same time. The sand, the crystals, the air, all made of spirit particles. She puffed out her cheeks importantly. They become part of whatever spiritual being absorbs them. That's why hollows eat each other. To get stronger by taking others' spirit particles. So this entire world is basically consumable. Naruto frowned, watching the shifting dunes with new understanding. Yup, even the moon. Nell pointed upward at the crescent that never moved. But nobody can reach it. Lord Aizen built Los Noches so big that it had a fake sky inside with a different sun and clouds. Beck. Oz he didn't like looking at the real moon all the time. Naruto absorbed this information while reaching out with his senses, which continued growing more attuned to this realm's spiritual fabric. The desert appeared empty, but vibrations of consciousness rippled beneath the surface, hungry, mindless hollows tunneling through the sand like sharks through water. Above, the sky occasionally rippled, edged with distortions that resembled heat waves, though temperature remained a mostly irrelevant concept here. This place exists in perfect stasis, Kurama observed within Naruto's mindscape. Neither growing nor decaying naturally. Only change comes through consumption and evolution. Like a reflection of human desire, Naruto replied internally. Endless hunger that can never be truly satisfied. Nell interrupted his philosophical moment by hurling a crystal fruit at his head. Naruto caught it reflexively, raising an eyebrow at his diminutive guide. Nell can tell when you're talking to Fox-san inside your head. Your whiskers glow and you get all serious-faced. She crossed her arms with exaggerated disapproval. It's rude to have secret conversations when Nell is right here. Naruto laughed, the sound echoing strangely across the empty dunes. Sorry, Nell. Kurama was just commenting on how different this world is from ours. He bit into the crystal fruit, which dissolved artially into his spiritual body while leaving the pleasantly sweet tart flesh. Where we come from, everything grows, changes, dies naturally. Nothing stays the same forever. That sounds scary, Nell replied, her childlike facade momentarily slipping to reveal deeper understanding. Change means things can get worse. Or better, Naruto countered gently. Without change, there's no hope for improvement. Nell considered this with surprising seriousness before her expression brightened. Nell sees something. Look. She pointed toward the horizon where crystalline structures jutted at irregular angles from the desert floor, forming a glittering forest of mineral spires. That's the crystal thicket. Nell's brothers might be there. The formations grew more impressive as they approached, earring spires of varying colors that hummed with subtle vibrations when the wind passed through them. Some reached hundreds of feet upward, while others formed intricate lattices barely taller than Naruto. Unlike the scattered crystal trees they'd encountered previously, these grew in dense clusters, creating maze-like passages between them. We should be careful, Naruto cautioned, noting how the structures distorted spiritual pressure, creating blind spots in his sensory perception. This would make an ideal place for an ambush. That's why Nell's brothers would hide here, she replied, lowering her voice to a stage whisper. They're very good at hiding. They entered the crystal forest cautiously. Inside, sound behaved strangely, sometimes amplified, other times completely dampened depth. Ending on how the formations channeled vibrations. Light refracted through the crystalline structures, casting rainbow patterns across the white sand. The effect was both beautiful and disorienting. Nell cupped her hands around her mouth. Dondochaka, Pesci, are you here? It's Nell. Her voice bounced between crystals, multiplying into dozens of overlapping echoes. Naruto winced at the cacophony, and at the tactical error of announcing their presence so loudly. Nell, maybe we should. A sudden spike in spiritual pressure cut him off, raw, hungry, and approaching fast. Naruto grabbed Nell and leapt atop a nearby crystal formation just as the sand below erupted upward. A massive worm-like hollow with a segmented body and a mask featuring multiple vertical eye slits emerged, its roar vibrating the crystals around them. Lurker, Nell squeaked, clinging to Naruto's back. They hide underground and ambush people walking in the crystal thicket. The worm hollow reared back, its mouth opening to reveal concentric rings of teeth that rotated in opposite directions. It lunged toward their perch, acid dripping from its maw that sizzled against the crystal. Naruto formed a Rasengan almost casually. The swirling sphere of energy now naturally incorporating this world's spiritual particles, giving it a golden luminescence streaked with blue. As the hollow stretched upward, he dropped their position and drove the sphere directly into its mask. The Rasengan didn't just impact physically, it seemed to unravel the spiritual structure of the hollow itself. Cracks of golden light spree out across the creature's body before it disintegrated entirely, its component spirit particles scattering into the air like luminous confetti. Nell applauded from her perch. That was amazing. Lurkers usually hunt in packs. Though, there'll be more. How many is a pack? Naruto asked, already sensing movement beneath the sand. Usually 6 or 7, Nell replied just as the ground began trembling at multiple points around them. Naruto's hands flew through signs, adapting his techniques to this realm's energy. Wind style. Great breakthrough. The jutsu manifested differently here. Instead of compressed air, waves of visible spiritual pressure erupted outward, blasting away the top layer of sand in a 30-foot radius. The sudden exposure revealed 5 more worm hollows just beneath the surface, their ambush disrupted. They writhed in apparent discomfort at being forcibly uncovered. Now they can't surprise us, Naruto grinned, forming shadow clones that materialized with perfect stability. His control over his spirit energy improving rapidly. The 5 Narutos moved with coordinated precision, each engaging a separate lurker. To Nell's astonished delight, the battle was embarrassingly one-sided. Each clone dispatched its target with efficient combinations of taijutsu and spiritually enhanced ninjutsu, demonstrating both Naruto's growing mastery of this realm's metaphysics and his natural combat adaptability. As the last lurker dissolved into spirit particles, Nell slid down from her crystal perch and bounded excitedly between the clones, poking each one. They're all solid. Nell can't even tell which is the real Naruto. That's the point, the Narutos chorused with identical grins. A slow, sardonic clap echoed through the crystal forest. Impressive for a newcomer. Most interlopers don't last 3 minutes against a lurker pack. Naruto's clones vanished in puffs of golden light as he spun toward the voice. Atop a nearby crystal formation stood a statuesque woman with dark skin, messy blonde hair, and striking turquoise eyes. Her mask fragment covered the lower half of her face and neck, while her outfit was distinctively minimalist, a jacket that revealed much of her midriff and sides, with a high collar and matching white pants. Most noticeable was the hollow hole positioned directly through her sternum and the tattoo of 3 visible on her right breast. Her posture conveyed absolute confidence without aggression, the bearing of someone who knew their power required no demonstration. Harribel-sama, Nell gasped, immediately hiding behind Naruto's legs. Naruto maintained a neutral stance, neither defensive nor challenging. You've been watching us for a while, he observed. Since before the lurkers attacked. The woman's eyes narrowed sly. TLY, the only visible portion of her face. Perceptive. I felt your unusual spiritual pressure entering my territory and came to investigate. Her gaze flicked to Nell. The child I recognize. You, however, are something new. 3 female Arankar appeared behind Harribel with Sonito, the hollow equivalent of Flash Step. Each bore distinctive features. One with olive skin and wavy brown hair, another with long, flowing dark hair and a single horn-like mask fragment, and the third with short, messy blue hair and a more provocative outfit. All 3 regarded Naruto with open suspicion. Should we eliminate him, Lady Harribel? The blue-haired one asked, her tone suggesting she hoped the answer would be affirmative. That would be unwise, Apache, Harribel replied evenly. Did you not observe, how easily he dispatched the lurker pack? Besides, he protects the child Nell, which suggests he is not our enemy. She returned her piercing gaze to Naruto. Unless proven otherwise. Naruto recognized the diplomatic opening. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, recently arrived in Hueco Mundo through unusual circumstances. Nell has been kind enough to guide me. I'm still learning about this world. An outsider, the dark-haired Arankar murmured. But not Shinigami, not human, not Quincy. No, Harribel agreed. Something else entirely. She descended from her perch with graceful precision, landing softly before Naruto. Despite being shorter than him, her presence was commanding. I am Tear Harribel, former Trace Espada. These are my Fracken, Sung Sun, Mila Rose, and Apache. Each woman nodded curtly at her introduction. though their wary stances remained unchanged. Former. Naruto inquired. A fleeting shadow passed through Harribel's eyes. Aizen's empire has fallen. The numerical rankings died with it. Now, we simply survive and protect what territory we can from those who would return Hueco Mundo to mindless savagery. Nell says you're one of the faction leaders now. Harribel's gaze shifted briefly to the child still partially hidden behind Naruto's legs. I protect those who follow me. I make no claim to rule. Her attention returned to Naruto with new intensity. But you haven't explained what you are, or how you came to be here. Naruto considered his response carefully. I'm a shinobi, a ninja, from another world entirely. During a battle, my opponent used a technique that tore open the barrier between dimensions. I fell through and landed in Hueco Mundo. Another world. Mila Rose scoffed. Beyond the human world and soul society. Yes, Naruto confirmed. Where I come from, we don't have hollows or shinigami. We have different kinds of energy and different spiritual beings. My power comes from chakra, a combination of physical and spiritual energy that exists in all living things in my world. Quote, Sung Sun covered her mouth with her long sleeve, a characteristic gesture. That would explain the unusual nature of your spiritual pressure. It contains elements I've never sensed before. Harribel studied Naruto with calculating eyes. And now you seek to return to your world. If possible, Naruto acknowledged. But first, I need to understand what's happening here. There's something wrong with the boundaries between dimensions. Nell and I encountered a corrupted hollow that had somehow absorbed power from my world. It mentioned a convergence coming. This information visibly disturbed Harribel and her fracken. A corrupted hollow, she repeated, her tone sharpening. With powers not of this realm. Yeah, it could open small rifts to what looked like the human world. And it pulled through something from my world to make itself stronger. Naruto frowned at the memory. It had a Rinne Sharingan eye, something that shouldn't exist outside my world's history. We've sensed disturbances, Harribel admitted after a moment of silence. Areas where the fabric between worlds thins unpredictably. Strange hollows have emerged from these disturbances, more bestial, more corrupt than even the most feral of our kind. Apache stepped forward impatiently. Lady Harribel, we shouldn't be sharing intelligence with an outsider. We don't know his true motives. My motive is preventing catastrophe, Naruto replied before Harribel could respond. If the barriers between dimensions are weakening, it threatens everyone, your world and mine. Corrupted Hollow mentioned Kagaya, an entity from my world's history who once tried to enslave all living beings. If her influence is somehow reaching Hueco Mundo, we're all in danger. Bold claims from a stranger, Mila Rose growled. Nell suddenly emerged from behind Naruto's legs, her childlike demeanor replaced by unexpected seriousness. Naruto-sama defeated the corrupted Vasto Lord all by himself. Nell saw it. He used golden chains and truth-seeking balls and sealed it away completely. Harribel's eyes widened fractionally at this information. You defeated a corrupted Vasto Lord alone. I sealed it, Naruto clarified. My world specializes in sealing techniques. But that's just treating a symptom, not the cause. These corruptions will continue spreading unless we understand what's happening to the barriers between worlds. A thoughtful silence followed as Harribel processed this information. Finally, she spoke with decisive authority. You will come with us. If what you say is true, this information must be shared with the other Arankar factions. We're looking for Nell's brothers first, Naruto countered firmly but respectfully. She believes they're somewhere in this crystal forest. Harribel nodded once. Apache, Mila Rose, search the northern quadrant. Sung Sun and I will take the southern approach. Dondochaka and Pesci are unlikely to reveal themselves while a stranger is present. But they know my fracken. Yes, Lady Harribel. The three women responded in unison before disappearing with Sonito. You command impressive loyalty, Naruto observed. Nell excitedly described her brothers to Sung Sun. They follow me because I protect them, Harribel replied simply. In return, they protect each other. That is all anyone can ask for in Hueco Mundo. Is that how you see leadership? Mutual protection. Harribel's eyes suggested she might be smiling beneath her mask fragment. You ask interesting questions for someone who claims to be new to our world. Leadership principles are universal, Naruto shrugged. I was being groomed to lead my village before I ended up here. A village leader. Harribel's tone carried subtle amusement. And now you wander Hueco Mundo with a child Arankar, defeating Vastolords and interfering in affairs beyond your understanding. That's pretty much my specialty, Naruto grinned. Getting involved in things beyond my understanding and figuring them out along the way. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant explosion that sent vibrations through the crystal structures around them. A plume of sand and spiritual energy erupted skyward from the northern section of the forest. Apache and Mila rose, Harribel stated, instantly alert. They've encountered something. Without discussion, both Naruto and Harribel moved simultaneously toward the disturbance, their movements almost perfectly synchronized despite never having fought together. Sung Sun followed with Nell secured in her arms, her expression suggesting she found this impromptu cooperation fascinating. They arrived to find a chaotic scene. Apache and Mila Rose stood back to back, surrounded by a dozen humanoid hollows with distinctive black veins running through their white masks and bodies. The corrupted hollows moved with jerky, unnatural motions, as if their bodies were being puppeteered by an unseen force. Lady Harribel, Mila Rose called out, blood streaming from a gash on her shoulder that emitted wisps of black energy. These things ambushed us. They don't fight like normal hollows, they coordinate perfectly. Naruto immediately recognized the corruption from his previous encounter. It's the same influence, he told Harribel. Like the Vastolord I fought, but these are lesser hollows infected with the same power. Harribel didn't waste time with questions. Her hand moved to the massive sword strapped to her back, drawing it in one fluid motion. Sung Sun, protect Nell. We'll handle this. The corrupted hollows turned as one toward the newcomers, their movements synchronizing with disturbing precision. Black fluid dripped from their mask eye holes, sizzling against the sand. Then, in perfect unison, they opened their mouths and fired seros, not the normal red or various colors associated with different hollow types, but sickly purple black beams threaded with what Naruto recognized as corrupted chakra. Harribel moved with breathtaking speed, her sword cleaving through 3 seros at once, dispersing their energy. Ola Azul, she called, swinging her blade to launch pressurized water projectiles that sliced through 2 of the corrupted hollows. Instead of dissolving normally, the destroyed hollows erupted into fountains of black ichor that began moving with purpose across the sand, seeking to rejoin and reform. Their spiritual structure is compromised, Naruto observed, forming a recentrican. They can't maintain individual forms properly. He hurled a spiraling disk of wind and spiritual energy, which expanded upon impact to envelop 3 more corrupted hollows. The wind blades shredded their forms completely, leaving nothing behind to regenerate. Effective, Harribel acknowledged, impressed despite herself. But what causes this corruption? One of the remaining hollows suddenly convulsed, its body distorting as something pushed outward from within. Its mask split down the middle as a pale branch-like growth erupted from its head, unmistakably a fragment of the god tree. That, Naruto pointed grimly. That shouldn't be here. It's my world. The god tree that nearly consumed everything during our last war. The corrupted hollow with the god tree fragment grew rapidly in power, its spiritual pressure doubling, then tripling as the branch expanded through its body. The remaining corrupted hollows moved toward it, allowing themselves to be absorbed into its increasingly monstrous form. We need to destroy it completely before it fully transforms, Naruto warned. In my world, the god tree absorbed the chakra of thousands before we could stop it. Harribel raised her sword horizontally before her. Then we shall erase it from existence. Tiburon. Spiritual pressure erupted around her in a heart-shaped surge that condensed into water, completely enveloping her form. When it receded, Harribel had transformed. Our mask fragment extended to cover her breasts and much of her face, resembling the jaws of a shark. Her weapon had become a broad pata-like blade resembling a shark's tooth, extending from her right arm. Most dramatically, bone-like protrusions extended from her back like ribs, and her legs were covered in armor reminiscent of a shark's lower jaw. Resurrection, Nell whispered to Naruto from Sung Sun's protective embrace. When Arankar released their sealed hollow powers, the transformed Harribel raised her blade arm, water gathering around it in spiraling currents. Lagoda, water compres. set into a massive bullet-like projectile that she fired directly at the mutating hollow. Simultaneously, Naruto formed a golden-tailed beast bomb, adapting the technique to incorporate this world's spiritual energy. The two attacks struck their target in perfect synchronization, creating a catastrophic explosion that sent shockwaves through the crystal forest, shattering smaller formations and ousing larger ones to chime discordantly. When the dust settled, nothing remained of the corrupted hollows except a small, withered fragment of the god tree branch, which twitched with residual energy. Naruto approached it cautiously, forming a special sealing tag from pure spiritual energy, an adaptation of the techniques he'd learned from Jiraiya. This needs to be contained carefully. If even small fragments can corrupt hollows, we can't let it remain free. He applied the seal, causing the fragment to shrink and become encased in a crystalline structure of golden spiritual energy. Picking it up, he turned to find Harribel watching him with newfound respect. "You recognized that corruption immediately," she observed. "You've encountered it before, beyond the one you mentioned." "In my world," Naruto confirmed. "It was part of a plan by Kagaya Otsutsuki to absorb all living chakra and rule as a goddess. We defeated her and sealed her away, but..." He frowned at the contained fragment. "Somehow, her influence is leaking between dimensions." Harribel's resurrection receded, returning her to her normal form in a shimmer of water droplets. "This threatens all realms, not just Hueco Mundo." "Exactly, which is why I need to understand how your world connects to others. The Shinigami, Soul Society, the human world, how the whole system works." "We've found them." Apache's Voic interrupted as she and Mila Rose returned, accompanied by two peculiar Arankar, one massive and bulbous with a tiki-like mask, the other slender with an insectoid mask covering his entire head. "Nell-sama," they cried in unison upon seeing the child. "Dondochaka, Peshi." Nell wriggled free from Sung Sun's grasp and launched herself at the two, wrapping her tiny arms around them both as best she could. Nell was so worried. Nell's been looking everywhere. The reunion was touchingly genuine, even the hardened Fracken watching with softened expressions as Nell babbled excitedly about her adventures with Naruto. "We must return to our stronghold," Harribel announced after allowing a few moments for the reunion. "These corruptions are spreading faster than anticipated, and we need to share information with the other factions." "Other factions?" Naruto inquired as they began moving as a group through the crystal forest. Sung Sun moved gracefully beside him, apparently assigned as his escort. After Lord Aizen's defeat, power in Hueco Mundo fragmented. Lady Harribel controls the largest territory and commands the most respect, but others contest her authority. "Like who?" Grimjow Jagerjaquez, the former Sexta Espada, leads the more aggressive faction, she explained, her voice melodious despite its perpetual undertone of sarcasm. "He cares only for battle and sees this CHAOS as an opportunity to establish himself through strength alone." "Then there's Lolly and Mainoli," Apache interjected from ahead. "They were Aizen's assistants, not Espada, but they've gathered Aura. NCAR who still worship Aizen and believe he'll return someday." Mila Rose joined the conversation. "Don't forget the Exequia's remnants. They've become more like a cult now, obsessed with purifying Hueco Mundo by eliminating anything they consider contamination, including other Arankar they deem impure." And finally, Harribel herself concluded, "There are the Privern Espada, former Espada W. Ho were demoted when Aizen created his numbered elites. They believe their experience makes them the rightful rulers now that the numbered Espada are mostly gone." "Politics," Naruto sighed. "Some things are universal. They traveled for what might have been hours, moving swiftly across the desert once they exited the crystal forest. Eventually, a structure appeared on the horizon, not the massive fortress of Las Noches that Nell had described, but a more modest compound built from white stone that seemed to have been carved directly from massive crystal formations. "La Marea," Harribel announced. "Our stronghold." The compound revealed itself to be more extensive than it first appeared. Much of it extended underground or was concealed within existing crystal structures, making its true size difficult to discern from outside, an excellent defensive measure. Guards posted at the perimeter, all female Arankar, nodded respectfully as Harribel approached. "Lady Harribel," one greeted, "BEF." Or her eyes widened at the sight of Naruto. "An intruder, a guest." Harribel corrected firmly. Summon the captains to the central chamber. We have developments to discuss. The interior of Lama. Ray contrasted sharply with the barren wasteland outside. Channels of flowing water. Actual water, not spiritual energy mimicking it, created a network of streams throughout the complex. Gardens of cries. Tall plants that somehow emitted varying colors glowed softly, providing illumination that complemented the blue-white light filtering through crystal skylights. Female Arankar of various types moved purposefully through the halls, many bearing scars from recent battles. Your followers are all women, Naruto observed. They choose to follow me, Harribel replied. I do not turn away those who seek protection, regardless of their nature. But yes, many female Arankar gravitate to my faction. Hueco Mundo has always been particularly harsh for those perceived as weaker. Nothing weak about any of you, Naruto commented, earning approving glances from the Fracken. They entered a large circular chamber where water flowed in a ring around a central platform. Crystalline projections of Hueco Mundo's landscape hovered above the water, apparently some form of surveillance system. Several Arankar already waited there, each bearing the unmistakable presence of significant power. Argue. Street has critical information regarding the disturbances, Harribel announced without preamble. He comes from beyond our realm, beyond even Soul Society and the human world. This pronouncement caused immediate commotion among the gathered Arankar. Questions and exclamations overlapped until Harribel raised a hand for silence. He has defeated corrupted hollows, including a Vasto Lord, and demonstrated power unlike any Shinigami. Quincy, or hollow. More importantly, he recognizes the source of the corruption. I believe his knowledge is vital to our survival. All eyes turned to Naruto expectantly. With the diplomatic instincts honed through years of negotiating with stubborn feudal lords and suspicious Kage, he stepped forward and began explaining, first about his own world and its energy system. Then about Kagaya and the God Tree, and finally about the corrupted hollows and the dimensional rifts. The barriers between worlds are weakening, he concluded. Not just between Hueco Mundo, Soul Society, and the human world, but between entire dimensional systems that should never have connected. If these rifts continue expanding, the corruption will spread until nowhere is safe. Oh, nay of the Arankar captains, a woman with snow-white hair and ice-blue eyes, spoke up. How do we know you're not responsible for these rifts? You admit you came through one yourself. A fair question, Naruto acknowledged. I arrived through a tear created during battle, not by my choice. But since arriving, I've been working to understand and counter this threat. Ask Nell and her brothers, they nest me seal away a corrupted Vasto Lord. He saved my Fracken from corrupted hollows in the crystal thicket, Harribel added, her endorsement carrying significant weight. His power specifical, Lee counters this corruption in ways ours cannot. Another captain leaned forward. If what you say is true, these rifts threaten Soul Society as well. Why haven't the Shinigami responded? They're USU, ally quick to interfere when the balance between worlds is threatened. Perhaps they are unaware of the true nature of the disturbance, Sung Sun suggested. Or perhaps they are already investigating in their own realm. Or maybe they don't care what happens to Hueco Mundo as long as it doesn't affect them, Apache muttered bitterly. Naruto considered this. If these rifts are appearing in Soul Society too, they'll investigate eventually. We might need their knowledge about how the boundaries between worlds function here. Cooperate with Shinigami, one captain scoffed. They see us only as monsters to be purified. Not all of them, Nell piped up unexpectedly. Ichigo helped Nell, and he fought with Nell's friends against the bad guys. Harribel nodded. Kurosaki Ichigo and his all-eyes have demonstrated that some Shinigami can see beyond simplistic divisions. If this threat is as significant as it appears, we may indeed need to establish communication. Before we consider such drastic measures, the white-haired captain interjected, we should verify these claims. I propose an expedition to investigate one of these rifts directly. Agreed, Harribel stated. Naruto Uzumaki will accompany the expedition, along with my Fracken and Captain Artola's reconnaissance team. She turned to Naruto. Unless you object. Not at all, he replied. Seeing an active rift might help me understand how they relate to the dimensional tear that brought me here. Plans were quickly established for the expedition to depart the following day toward a region where multiple rifts had been detected. As the meeting concluded, Arrancar dispersed to their various duties, leaving Naruto with Harribel and her immediate circle. "You've given us much to consider," Harribel told him as they exited the chamber. "For now, you and Nell's companions will be given quarters in the eastern wing. My Fracken will show you the way." "Thank you," Naruto said sincerely, "for listening, and for taking this threat seriously." Harribel studied him for a moment. "You speak with unusual conviction for someone thrown into an unfamiliar world. Most would be consumed by fear or self-preservation." Naruto smiled slightly. "Where I come from, I learned that real strength comes from protecting others, not just yourself. Different world, same principle." A subtle shift in Harribel's eyes suggested appreciation of this sentiment. "Rest while you can. Tomorrow's expedition may provide answers, but it will certainly bring danger." With that, she turned and departed, her posture regal despite the weight of leadership evident in her bearing. Sung Sun approached, gesturing for Naruto to follow. "This way. We've prepared accommodations for you near our own quarters, as Lady Harribel wishes to keep you close." "To keep an eye on me?" Naruto asked with a knowing smile. "Naturally," she replied without pretense. "You are an unknown variable of considerable power. But also," she hesitated, then continued more softly, "Lady Harribel sees something in you that intrigues her. She believes you may be important to Hueco Mundo's future. I just want to understand what's happening and protect both our worlds." Naruto said honestly. "Noble sentiments," Sung Sun observed with mild skepticism. "We shall see if they survive contact with the harsher realities of our realm." The Eastern Wing proved to be one of the more comfortable areas of the complex, with private chambers arranged around a central courtyard featuring a pond of luminescent water. Nell and her brothers were given a IOUS room where they immediately began recreating their fort from scattered cushions, their childlike joy incongruous with the somber mood pervading the stronghold. Naruto's quarters were simple but comfortable. A bed-like platform consisting of surprisingly soft crystal fibers, a pool of glowing water for bathing, and a balcony overlooking the endless desert beyond. After ensuring Nell was settled with her reunited family, he stepped onto the balcony and gazed out at Hueco Mundo's unchanging sky. "You've adapted quickly to this realm," Kurama observed within his mindscape. "Your chakra has begun naturally incorporating spiritual particles without conscious effort." "I feel it," Naruto agreed, examining the golden energy that now flowed around his hand with barely a thought. "It's becoming more intuitive, but there's something else happening too. I'm starting to sense the emptiness that defines this place. The hunger at its core." "Be cautious," Kurama warned. His world reshapes everything within it to match its nature eventually. Even we may not be immune to its influence long-term. "All the more reason to understand these rifts quickly," Naruto replied. "Though I have to admit, there's something fascinating about this place. It's harsh but honest. No pretense, just raw existence." "You've always had an annoying ability to find value in the most unlikely places," Kurama grumbled. Though without real irritation, Naruto chuckled, his attention drawn to movement in the courtyard below. Harribel had emerged from another wing and now stood beside the luminescent pond. Her mask fragment removed to reveal her full face as she performed what appeared to be a meditative kata. Her movements flowed like water itself, powerful yet graceful, controlled yet fluid. Without her mask, her face revealed striking beauty, but more notable was the intense focus in her expression, the absolute precision of each movement. This was not performance but discipline, the practice of a warrior who understood that perfection required constant refinement. Naruto watched respectfully, recognizing the private ritual for what it was. There was something compelling about Harribel beyond her obvious power, a depth of purpose, a clarity of conviction that resonated with his own nature. Eventually, she replaced her mask fragment and departed, never having acknowledged his presence, though Naruto suspected she had been aware of his observation. The following morning, or what passed for morning in the eternal night of Hueco Mundo, the expedition assembled in the central courtyard. Captain Artola, the white-haired Arrancar from the meeting, led a team of 6 reconnaissance specialists equipped with curious devices that appeared to measure spiritual fluctuations. Harribel's three Fracken prepared what resembled supply packs, though Naruto wasn't certain what supplies meant in a world of spirits. To his surprise, Harribel herself appeared, her massive sword strapped to her back. "I've decided to accompany the expedition personally," she announced. "These rifts represent the greatest threat to our territory since Aizen's fall. Nell and her brothers would remain at La Marea, much to Nell's vocal disappointment. But Nell wants to help too. Nell is strong." "You are," Naruto assured her, crouching to her level. "But I need you to be our backup. If something happens to us, you and your brothers need to tell everyone what you saw. Besides, you just found your family again, take some time to enjoy being together." This reasoning appeased her somewhat, though she made Naruto promise to come back with amazing stories about fighting weird monsters. The expedition departed swiftly, using a combination of Sonito and Naruto's enhanced speed to cover ground rapidly. Their destination lay to the southwest, in a region Nell had called the Shifting Plains, an area where the desert itself seemed unable to maintain consistent form, sometimes appearing as sand, other times as glass-like surfaces or crystalline formations, all changing without pattern or warning. As they traveled, Naruto found himself naturally falling into formation alongside Harribel, their pace perfectly matched. "Your stronghold is impressive," he commented. "Especially the water systems. I wouldn't have expected to find actual water in a desert realm." "Water exists in all worlds," Harribel replied. "In Hueco Mundo, it simply requires more effort to manifest and maintain. My aspect of death is sacrifice. I understand that meaningful existence requires giving of oneself for something greater." Aspect of death. Each espada represented an aspect of death, she explained. Sacrifice, despair, emptiness, destruction, and so forth. Aizen selected us not just for power, but for how we embodied these concepts. Naruto considered this. "In my world, we talk about the will of fire, the drive to protect future generations even at personal cost. Sounds similar to your sacrifice." "Perhaps." Her tone suggested this parallel had not escaped her notice. "Though I suspect your will of fire emphasizes hope, while my sacrifice acknowledges the inevitable loss inherent in existence." "Two sides of the same principle," Naruto suggested. "You can't have sacrifice without something to hope for, and hope often requires sacrifice to achieve." This philosophical exchange was interrupted as they approached the shifting plains. The landscape before them undulated visibly, sections of desert transforming from sand to crystal to liquid-like substance and back again without apparent pattern. The air itself seemed unstable, shimmering with distortions that bent light in impossible ways. "The boundary instabilities are increasing," Captain Artola observed, consulting one of her devices. "Spiritual pressure readings fluctuate wildly here." Naruto extended his senses, pushing his awareness outward. There, he pointed toward what appeared to be a suspended fracture in the air itself, glowing with sickly purple-black energy. "That rift is different from the others. It's pulsing." The expedition approached cautiously. The rift hung approximately 15 feet above the ground, a jagged tear about 6 feet in length that occasionally widened to reveal glimpses of another landscape, not the human world or soul society, but somewhere with massive trees and flowing chakra pathways visible in the soil itself. "That's definitely my world," Naruto confirmed grimly. "Or part of it. That looks like the outskirts of the Forest of Death near Konoha." Artola's team deployed their instruments in a perimeter around the rift, taking readings while maintaining safe distance. "The spiritual composition is unlike anything we've cataloged," she reported. "It emits both spiritual pressure and something else. Something that doesn't register properly on our equipment." "Chakra," Naruto supplied. "The energy from my world." Harribel studied the rift intently. "How long has this particular tear been present?" "Based on distortion patterns in the surrounding area, approximately 20 days, one of Artola's specialists answered. "It's expanded roughly 30% during that period." "That coincides with my arrival," Naruto noted. "Though I landed nowhere near here. The rifts may all connect through sub-dimensional pathways," Artola theorized. "Like tunnels beneath the surface of reality." As they discussed possibilities, Naruto sensed a sudden spike in chaotic energy from the rift. "Everyone back," he shouted just as the tear expanded violently, doubling in size with an audible ripping sound. From within the widened gap, something massive began emerging. First came branch-like appendages that pulsed with unnatural life, followed by a bulbous central mass covered in what resembled eyes. As more of the entity pushed through, its nature became clear, a fragment of the god tree, somehow animate and purposeful, dragging itself into Hueco Mundo. "What is that abomination?" Apache exclaimed, drawing her weapon. "Part of the god tree," Naruto answered, already forming a recentrican. "But it shouldn't be able to move independently like this." The god tree fragment fully emerged, unearthly roots spreading across the shifting plains, which seemed to recoil from its touch, sand and crystal alike drawing away from the corrupting influence. Eyes, covering its surface fixed on the expedition party, focusing particularly on Naruto. "Uzumaki," a voice resonated, not sound but pure malevolent intent given form. "Vessel of convergence. It knows you," Harribel observed, drawing her sword. "The corruption is spreading faster than I thought," Naruto replied grimly. "These fragments aren't just leaking through randomly, they're being directed." The god tree fragment's branches suddenly shot outward, targeting multiple members of the expedition simultaneously. Artola's team scattered while Harribel and her Fracken engaged directly, cutting through the wooden tendrils with their respective weapons. Naruto launched his prepared recentrican, which sliced through the main trunk of the fragment, dispersing a portion of its mass into disintegrating particles. Unlike a normal god tree, this fragment regenerated almost instantly, drawing spiritual particles from the surrounding environment to replace its lost mass. "Feed," it intoned. "Merge. Become." It's adapting to Hueco Mundo's spiritual environment, Naruto realized aloud. Converting spirit particles into something between chakra and spiritual energy. Harribel stepped beside him. "Conventional attacks won't be sufficient. We need to destroy it completely or seal it away." "Sealing is our best option," Naruto agreed. "But I'll need time to prep. Or a complex enough seal for something this size." Without hesitation, Harribel raised her sword. "Hunt, Tiburon." Water exploded around her as she entered her resurrection form. "We will buy you the time you require." Her Fracken followed suit, each releasing their own resurrections with calls of Thrust, Sirva, Devour, Leona, and Strangle, Anaconda. Their transformed states reflected their animal natures, Apache gaining deer-like features with horn weapons, Mila Rose taking on lioness attributes with increased strength, and Sung Sun developing a snake-like lower body and extended weaponized sleeves. The four Arankar attacked in perfect coordination, clearly accustomed to fighting together. Harribel's water-based attacks sliced through the god tree's branches while her Fracken targeted its eyes and root system. Captain Artola and her team provided support from the perimeter, using specialized Keto-like techniques to contain the spiritual pressure emanating from the fragment. Meanwhile, Naruto entered Sage mode, the process now incorporating spirit particles along with natural energy in a way unique to this realm. Golden markings flowed across his skin as he began creating a specialized sealing array, drawing directly on the sand with spiritually enhanced chakra that burned the pattern permanently into the ground. The god tree fragment fought with increasing desperation as it recognized the threat, its branches multiplying and developing thorn-like protrusions that secreted black ichor. "Vessel, join. Become one. It's targeting you specifically, Sun," Ji-Sun observed as she sliced through branches attempting to circle behind toward Naruto. "It recognizes my chakra," he confirmed without breaking concentration on the seal. "The fragments are drawn to familiar energy, like calling to like." Quote, "The battle intensified as the fragment began pulling more aggressively on the surrounding spiritual environment, causing the shifting planes to become increasingly unstable. Sections of ground liquefied completely while others crystallized explosively, making footing treacherous for everyone." Harribel demonstrated why she had been the Trace Espada, her water-based attacks growing more powerful as she drew moisture from the atmosphere itself. "Cascada," she called, creating a massive surge of water that temporarily engulfed the entire fragment, providing momentary respite for her team. "Almost done," Naruto announced, the sealing array now covering a 30-foot circle surrounding their position. "I just need to connect the final sequences." As he worked on the last segments, a horrifying transformation overtook the god tree fragment. It began absorbing the black ichor dripping from its own wounds, condensing and reshaping itself into a more humanoid configuration. Eyes shifted to form a face-like arrangement, while branches twisted into limb-like appendages. Uzumaki. It spoke more clearly now. She remembers you. She comes for you. Kagaya is sealed away. Naruto replied defiantly, completing the final seal markings. Whatever you are, you're just an echo, a fragment. All fragments rejoin the whole, the entity responded cryptically. All worlds become one. The convergence approaches. Naruto stood, the complete sealing array glowing with golden light beneath them. Not if I can help it. Everyone, move to the edge of the array but stay within the circle. Harribel and her team complied instantly, demonstrating impressive tactical adaptability by coordinating their withdrawal without lessening their defensive coverage. As they reached the perimeter of the glowing circle, Naruto formed a complex sequence of hand signs. 6-path sealing technique. Dimensional imprisonment. The array erupted upward in pillars of golden light that connected in a dome over the god tree fragment. The entity thrashed against the forming containment, but each point of contact with the light caused portions of its mass to calcify and crumble. Unlike the more combative sealing used against the corrupted Vasto Lord, this technique focused on complete isolation, creating a pocket dimension within the seal itself. Delay. Only delay. The fragment's voice faded as the sealing completed, compressing the entire entity into a sphere of golden light that gradually shrank to the size of a marble. The marble dropped into Naruto's outstretched hand, still warm with contained energy. Impressive, Harribel commented as her resurrection receded. Is it truly contained? For now, Naruto confirmed, examining the tiny sphere. This seal creates a micro-dimension where time passes differently. It's experiencing thousands of years for every minute in our reality. Eventually, it will consume itself without external spiritual energy to absorb. Captain Artola approached, her white hair disheveled from battle. The rift remains, though it has contracted somewhat. She gestured toward the tear, which had indeed shrunk but still pulsed with unstable energy. These rifts won't close naturally, Naruto said, pocketing the sealed fragment. They're symptoms of a larger problem with the boundaries between worlds. Could you seal the rift itself? Harribel inquired. Naruto studied the tear thoughtfully. Maybe, but it would be treating the symptom rather than the cause. New rifts would continue forming elsewhere. We need to understand what's weakening the dimensional barriers in the first place. The entity mentioned convergence again. Sung Sun noted as the Fracken rejoined them, their resurrections also receded. The same term the corrupted Vasto Lord used. And it referenced Kagaya directly, Naruto added grimly. Claiming she remembers me and is coming. That shouldn't be possible unless her seal is weakening somehow. Harribel studied the contracting rift with narrowed eyes. Could your arrival have destabilized whatever prison contains this Kagaya? I don't see how. Naruto frowned. E-dimensional tear that brought me here was created by a different Otsutsuki entirely. One of Kagaya's clan, but not directly connected to her imprisonment. Perhaps all dimensional disturbances are inherently connected, Artola suggested. Like ripples in a pond affecting the entire surface regardless of where they originate. Before they could theorize further, Naruto's enhanced senses detected a new presence, powerful, focused, and approaching rapidly from the direction of the rift itself. Something's coming through, he warned, readying himself for another battle despite his depleted energy from the sealing technique. The rift pulsed once more, but what emerged was not another corrupted entity. Instead, a petite figure in black robes leapt through, wielding a sword with a pure white blade. Landing gracefully on the shifting sands, the newcomer assessed the situation with striking violet eyes. Shinigami, Apache hissed, raising her weapon defensively. Indeed, the woman's black Kei Shihakusho marked her unmistakably as a soul reaper. Her short black hair framed a delicate face set in an expression of wary determination. Despite her diminutive stature, she carried herself with the confidence of considerable experience and skill. Wait, Naruto cautioned the Arankar, sensing something different about this Shinigami. Her spiritual pressure felt cleaner, more organized than the chaotic energy of Hueco Mundo. But there was no malice in it, only purposeful vigilance. The Shinigami's gaze swept across the assembled Arankar before settling on Naruto with evident surprise. You're not a hollow, she stated flatly. Nor Shinigami, nor human. What are you? Before Naruto could respond, Harribel stepped forward, her posture tense but controlled. State your purpose, Shinigami. You trespass in Hawako Mundo. The Soul Reaper shifted her stance slightly, ready for defense but not initiating hostility. I am Rukia Kuchiki, Lieutenant of the 13th Division. I was dispatched to investigate anomalous spiritual disturbances detected between dimensions. Her eyes narrowed at the ceiling array still glowing faintly on the ground. Though it appears you have already engaged whatever emerged. Rukia Kuchiki. Naruto repeated, something about the name triggering recognition though he couldn't place why. The Shinigami's attention returned to him sharply. You know of me? No, he admitted. Your name just seems significant somehow. He shook off the strange feeling of déjà vu. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I'm not from any of your worlds. I arrived here through a dimensional tear similar to that one. He gestured toward the rift, which continued to contract slowly. Rukia's expression registered surprise followed by focused interest. Another dimension entirely. Beyond Soul Society, Hawako Mundo. And the human world. Yes, a world where chakra, not spiritual pressure, is the dominant energy. These rifts are allowing corruption from my world to enter yours, and presumably vice versa. The Shinigami processed this information with remarkable composure. That would explain the inconsistencies in our readings. Captain Kuritsuchi detected energy patterns that did match any known spiritual composition. Her gaze shifted to the Arankar. Though I admit, I didn't expect to find Tier Harribel investigating these phenomena personally. My territory, my concern, Harribel replied simply. The corruption poses a threat to all realms, not just Hawako Mundo. A tense moment of silence followed as ancient enemies assessed each other in this unexpected context. Finally, Rukia made a subtle gesture of conciliation by lowering her sword slightly. Soul Society has detected similar rifts appearing in the Rukongai and even within the Seraite itself, she revealed. Unknown entities have emerged, causing considerable damage before being contained or destroyed. Captain Kuritsuchi believes the barriers between worlds are being systematically weakened by an external force. That matches our findings, Artola confirmed reluctantly. Naruto stepped forward, bridging the gap between Shinigami and Arankar both literally and figuratively. These aren't random events. Something, or someone, is intentionally weakening the barriers between dimensions. The corrupted entities we've encountered all reference a convergence coming. Rukia's eyes narrowed. Convergence of what? Of worlds. Naruto answered grimly. At least, that's my theory. And behind it is a being from my world named Kagaya Otsutsuki. Someone who should be securely sealed in a dimensional prison. The ground suddenly trembled beneath them, the shifting planes living up to their name as the entire landscape began undulating violently. The rift expanded again, pulsing with erratic energy. We should continue this discussion elsewhere, Harribel decided, eyeing the unstable tier. Lieutenant Kuchiki, despite our historical differences, I propose a temporary alliance to address this common threat. You are invited to La Marea to share information. The offer clearly surprised both the Shinigami and Harribel's own Fracken. Rukia hesitated only briefly before nodding decisively. Agreed. These dimensional disturbances transcend our usual conflicts. As they prepared to depart, Naruto felt a strange resonance from the rift, almost as if it were responding to the assembled group. For just a moment, he thought he glimpsed a face within the tear, pale, feminine, with horns and a third eye, before it vanished in a pulse of energy. She's watching, Kurama growled within his mindscape. Somehow, she's becoming aware of the pathways between worlds. Then we'd better move quickly, Naruto murmured, joining the others as they departed the increasingly unstable shifting planes. Behind them, the rift continued its erratic pulsations, a harbinger of the convergence to come, and the chaos that would follow. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Soul Society's Emissary. Rukia Kuchiki had witnessed many strange things during her career as a Shinigami, hollow transformations, forbidden Bankai, even the seemingly impossible evolution of a human into something beyond death gods themselves. Yet the sight before her now challenged even her expansive definition of extraordinary. She walked through the stronghold of Tier Harribel, former Espada, Arankar General, and natural enemy of Soul Society, as an invited guest. More remarkable still was the golden-haired stranger who radiated energy unlike anything in her extensive experience, neither Ryutsu nor Raryoku, but Something both more primal and more refined. Your compound is unexpected, Rukia commented, maintaining the carefully neutral tone she'd perfected during endless Kuchiki clan functions. Her vile, eyes methodically catalogued defensive positions, exit routes, and potential weapons, habits ingrained from decades of survival. What did you expect, Lieutenant? Blood-soaked walls and piles of bones. Sung Sun's voice carried delicate venom beneath its melodious surface. The snake-like Arankar walked closely behind Rukia, her long sleeve perpetually covering her mouth in what the Shinigami cognized as both affected modesty and tactical advantage, hiding her expressions and potential Kido gestures. Frankly, yes, Rukia didn't bother with pretense. Our previous encounters with Arankar habitations haven't featured functioning ecosystems and architectural aesthetics. Harribel, leading their procession through La Marea's winding corridors, spoke without turning. Aizen's influence was limiting. His vision for Hueco Mundo centered entirely on military function. Some of us maintained other aspirations. Naruto walked beside Harribel, seemingly unbothered by the tension crackling between Shinigami and Arankar. Water gardens in a spiritual desert, he observed, gesturing toward an internal courtyard where crystalline plants surrounded a luminescent pool. Creating life where it shouldn't exist. That takes vision beyond survival. Something shifted in Harribel's posture, a subtle relaxation that only Rukia's trained eye detected. The Arankar leader didn't respond verbally, but the minuscule nod conveyed volumes to the perceptive Shinigami. Interesting, Rukia thought. The trace Espada values being understood more than being praised. They entered what appeared to be a strategic command center, a circular chamber with a large table formed from a single crystal, its surface displaying a three-dimensional map of Hueco Mundo. Various regions pulsed with different colored lights, presumably indicating territories, threats, and resources. Captain Artola's team immediately moved to update the display with data from their expedition. Your reconnaissance technology is remarkably advanced, Rukia noted, genuine surprise coloring her tone. Some of these tracking systems rival 12th Division innovations. Necessity breeds invention, Harribel replied. After Aizen's fall, we needed information more than raw power. Captain Artola previously served in Shielaporo's research division before his excesses became intolerable. The white-haired captain acknowledged this with a clinical nod. The Octava's methods were reprehensible, but his understanding of spiritual particle manipulation had merit. We've refined his cruder approaches. Her ice-blue eyes flicked toward Rukia. Without the needless torture, Rukia remained skeptical but recognized the olive branch being extended. She reached inside her Shihakusho and removed a small device, a modified Denryashinki communication unit. Perhaps this might help coordinate our information. It contains Soul Society's current mapping of dimensional anomalies. Apache bristled. It could also contain tracking Kido or surveillance Bakudo. We shouldn't. It does contain tracking functionality, Rukia interrupted flatly. Standard protocol for any Shinigami equipment. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. She placed the device on the table and stepped back. Examine it. Disable the tracking if you wish, but the anomaly data is genuine. Captain Kuritsuchi is many things, but when it comes to dimensional research, his information is unparalleled. Naruto watched this exchange with evident interest, his blue eyes shifting between the Shinigami and Arankar with thoughtful assessment. Where I come from, he offered. Breaking the tense silence, opposing villages sometimes shared intelligence during common threats while maintaining their security protocols. It actually led to the first peace treaties after generations of war. Artola picked up the device, turning it over in her pale hands. I can isolate the tracking functions without compromising the data. She glanced at Harribel, who nodded permission. As the captain moved to a separate workstation, Harribel gestured toward the central table. Shall we begin the formal briefing? Lieutenant Kuchiki, perhaps you could explain Soul Society's current understanding of these rifts. Rukia approached the table, maintaining a respectful but vigilant distance from the Arankar leadership. Despite their apparent civility, she hadn't forgotten what these beings were capable of, what they had done during Aizen's war. Her hand remained casually near her Zanpakuto, Soda no Shirayuki. Approximately 23 days ago, Armo Nightoring systems detected the first anomaly, a dimensional tear in the western Rukongai's 47th district, she began, professional detachment masking her concern. Initially presumed to be unauthorized Garganta activity, investigation revealed energy signatures inconsistent with known holo or Arankar techniques. The holographic display above the table shifted as Artola integrated data from Rukia's device, revealing a map of Soul Society with pulsing markers indicating rift locations. Subsequent anomalies appeared at accelerating intervals, Rukia continued. The earliest manifestations seemed random, but recent patterns suggest targeting of spiritually significant locations, the Senkaimon Gates, administrative centers in Seraite, and certain areas with historical importance. Targeted, Naruto repeated, leaning forward to study the display. Not random decay of dimensional barriers. Precisely. Rukia nodded, acknowledging his quick grasp of the situation. Captain Kuretsuchi described it as dimensional lock-picking, systematic probing for weaknesses in reality's structure. Harribel's eyes narrowed. And what emerged from these rifts? Rukia's expression darkened. Various entities, all sharing certain characteristics: black veiny corruption, unusual regenerative capabilities, and hostility beyond typical holo aggression. She hesitated, then added, and all Xhe. Biting energy patterns similar to what I sense from Naruto Uzumaki, though distorted and malignant. All eyes turned to Naruto, who met their scrutiny without defensiveness. That tracks with what we've seen here. Corrupted fragments from my world merging with entities from yours, specifically, parts of what we call the God Tree. You mentioned this, Kagaya, being, Rukia pressed. A sealed entity from your world. Explain. For the next several minutes, Naruto outlined the history of Kagaya Otsutsuki, the arrival of the celestial being, her consumption of the God Tree's fruit, the birth of chakra in his world, her eventual megalomania and the battle to seal her away. Rukia listened intently, cataloging similarities to Soul Society's own history with the Soul King and the formation of the worlds. The parallels are unsettling, she observed when he finished. Our worlds form through different mechanisms but follow similar patterns of power, corruption, and containment. Maybe that's why the barriers between them are vulnerable now, Naruto suggested. Similar resonance patterns creating natural weak points. Artola rejoined them, adding the reconfigured Denryashinki to the central display. I've completed the integration. When we overlay Soul Society's anomaly data with our own recordings, the hologram expanded, showing Hueco Mundo and Soul Society side by side with their respective rifts highlighted. As they watched, the display extrapolated connecting lines between corresponding anomalies, revealing a distinct geometric pattern. That's impossible, Rukia whispered, violet eyes widening. It's forming a perfect Juraiki circuit. A what? Naruto asked. A spiritual convergence matrix, Harribel answered instead, surprising Rukia with her knowledge. In theory, the perfect pathway for massive spiritual energy transfer between realms. Aizen studied these extensively while planning his assault on the Soul King's palace. Rukia nodded grimly. The Juri, Ichi in Karakura town was why Aizen targeted it, a spiritually saturated location where the boundaries between worlds naturally thin. This pattern suggests someone is artificially creating a massive, multi-dimensional Juraiki. For what purpose? Sung Sun asked, her usual sarcasm replaced by genuine concern. To facilitate transfer between worlds, Naruto answered, studying the pattern with growing comprehension. Or more specifically, to allow something massive to pass through. His blue eyes met Rukia's violet ones across the table. Kagaya was sealed by splitting her from the Ten Tails and imprisoning her in a separate dimension. If someone, or something, is trying to free her, they would need a pathway large enough for a godlike entity to cross between dimensional planes, Rukia finished, the implications chilling her. Despite their historical enmity, she found herself exchanging a look of mutual understanding with Harribel. This is beyond our usual conflicts, the Arankar leader stated, voicing what everyone realized. If this pattern completes, all worlds are threatened, Rukia confirmed. Hueco Mundo, Soul Society, the human world, potentially others we don't even know about. The briefing continued for hours, analyzing data, theorizing mechanisms, and cataloging the various corrupted entities encountered thus far. Despite initial wariness, Rukia found hers. Elf impressed by the Arankar's analytical capabilities, particularly Captain Artola's scientific acumen. More surprising was the natural authority Naruto seemed to command, not through domination or intimidation, but through a magnetic combination of optimism and strategic insight that drew even opposing factions into productive dialogue. Eventually, Harribel called for a recess. "We've identified the threat but not yet its origin point or countermeasures. I suggest we continue after food and rest. Lieutenant Kuchiki, arrangements have been made for you in the Eastern Wing, near our other guest." Her emphasis on the last word carried complex undertones. Naruto wasn't precisely a prisoner, but neither was he entirely free to leave. As the gathering dispersed, Rukia found herself momenta. Riley alone with Naruto in the corridor outside the command center. His spiritual pressure, or chakra, as he called it, felt simultaneously familiar and utterly alien. It radiated warmth unlike the cold efficiency of Shinigami Ryutsu or the hungry emptiness of hollow spiritual energy. "You're handling this remarkably well," she observed. "Most beings would be traumatized by sudden transportation to an entirely different dimensional system." Naruto's laugh carried genuine amusement. "This isn't actually the strangest situation I've found myself in. At least no one's trying to extract a-tailed beast from my body or turn the moon into a mind control device." Rukia blinked. "I can't tell if you're joking." "Wish I was." His smile remained, but something in his eyes conveyed the weight of experience beyond his apparent years. "What about you?" Not every Shinigami would agree to cooperate with Arrancar, even temporarily. Rukia's posture straightened imperceptibly, a reflexive response to perceived challenge. "I serve where directed." The captain commander authorized temporary cooperation given the scale of the threat. "That's the official reason," Naruto observed, his perception uncomfortably acute. "But you specifically were sent." "Why?" She considered deflection but recognized it would be futile. Something about this strange being seemed to perceive truth instinctively. "I have relevant experience with cross-dimensional threats and unorthodox alliances. I was Ichigo Kurisaki's first Shinigami contact." Understanding dawned in his expression. "The Shinigami who helped Nell and fought alongside Arrancar. You're that Rukia." "My reputation apparently precedes me, even in other dimensions," she replied dryly. "Though I suspect Nell's version contains significant embellishments." They resumed walking, falling into matched stride naturally. "I've been wondering," Naruto said after a moment, "how your world's spirit system works compared to mine. The divisions between Shinigami, hollows, humans, it's all connected somehow, right?" Rukia appreciated the directness of his question. Unlike many Shinigami who obfuscated basic spiritual mechanics as a form of control, he had always believed understanding brought better results than ignorance. Perhaps her time with Ichigo had reinforced this perspective. "All souls exist in a continuous cycle," she explained, unconsciously adopting the teaching tone she'd used with Ichigo years ago. "Humans die and cross to soul society if guided by Shinigami, or become hollows if left too long or bound by negative emotions. Hollows purified by Shinigami Zanpakuto return to the cycle, while those who consume enough other hollows can evolve into Mainos, then potentially Arrancar if their masks are removed. Shinigami maintain the balance of souls between worlds." "And you were born a Shinigami?" he asked as they turned down a corridor lined with softly glowing crystal formations. "No," she admitted. "I died as a human infant. Grew up in Soul Society's poorest district, and later developed spiritual powers. I was adopted into the noble Kuchiki family and trained formally as a Shinigami. From street orphan to noble lieutenant," Naruto observed with what sounded like genuine admiration. "That's impressive in any world." The compliment, delivered without artifice, caught Rukia off guard. She was accustomed to political flattery and formal recognition of her accomplishments, but rarely encountered such straightforward appreciation of her journey. Before she could formulate a proper response, they were interrupted by the appearance of a small green-haired figure barreling down the hallway. "Naruto-sama." Nell launched herself through the air, colliding with Naruto's chest with such force that Rukia instinctively reached for her Zanpakuto before recognizing the attack as an enthusiastic greeting. Nell was worried. "Did you fight more corrupted monsters? Did you use the golden chains again? Who's the short lady?" "Short," Rukia muttered, eye twitching slightly. Naruto caught Nell easily, swinging her up onto his shoulders with practiced motion. "Nell, This is Lieutenant Rukia Kuchiki from Soul Society. She's here to help us figure out what's happening with the rifts. Lieutenant, this is Nell. Nell peered down at Rukia with sudden suspicion. Shinigami lady, are you going to try cutting Naruto-sama with your sword? Because Nell will protect him. Nell is very strong. The child Arankar puffed out her cheeks and made what she clearly believed was a frightening face. The effect, combined with he comical mask fragment and the green smudge on her nose, was so incongruously adorable that Rukia found her formal demeanor cracking. I promise not to cut Naruto-san without very good reason, she replied. The corner of her mouth quirking upward. Though I reserve the right if he becomes troublesome. Nell considered this seriously before nodding. That's fair. Naruto-sama can be troublesome sometimes. He talks to his fox friend for too long and ignores Nell. A terrible offense, Rukia agreed solemnly. Clearly worthy of sword drawing. Naruto watched this exchange with evident amusement. I see you two will get along just fine. Should I be concerned? Definitely. Both females answered simultaneously, then glanced at each other in surprised recognition of their synchronicity. Nell giggled, her childish suspicion evaporating. Nell likes the short Shinigami lady. She doesn't talk to Nell like a baby. I never much cared for adults who patronize children, Rukia replied honestly. Intelligence doesn't require physical maturity. Something in her tone must have revealed more than intended, as Naruto studied her with newfound interest. Before he could comment, they were interrupted by the arrival of Sung-sun, who had apparently been tasked with escorting Rukia to her quarters. Lady Harribel requests your presence at the evening meal in 2 hours, Lieutenant, the Aaron. Carr announced with formal politeness that did nothing to mask her underlying wariness. I'll show you to your accommodations now. Rukia nodded to Naruto. We'll continue our discussion later. To Nell, she offered a small but genuine smile. Perhaps you can tell me more about your adventures with Naruto-san sometime. Nell has lots of stories. The child declared enthusiastically. Like when Yuto-sama fought the sandworms with his clone army, or when he sealed the evil tree monster. I look forward to hearing them all, Rukia replied, finding herself surprisingly sincere despite the angeness of forming social connections with a child hollow. As Sung-sun led her away, Rukia cast one final glance back at Naruto. He stood bathed in the crystal-filtered light, Nell perched happily on his shoulders, radiating an aura of belonging despite being in a world entirely foreign to him. For a fleeting moment, she was reminded of Ichigo, another outsider who had effortlessly inserted himself into the complex politics of spiritual worlds through sheer force of personality and uncompromising integrity. Dangerous comparison she cautioned herself. Ichigo was human with Shinigami powers. This being is something else entirely. Yet she couldn't dismiss the parallels, or the uncomfortable awareness that her involvement with Ichigo had fundamentally altered not just her own fate, but the structure of Soul Society itself. History, it seemed, had a perverse fondness for repetition. In her assigned quarters, Rukia knelt in practiced Seiza position, Sota no Shirayuki laid care fully before her on the crystalline floor. Eyes closed, she regulated her breathing as she had been taught, establishing the necessary mental calm for secure communication with Soul Society. The Modif IED Soul phone Captain Kuretsuchi had provided contained specialized Kido circuits designed to transmit through dimensional barriers without detection. The device hummed softly as the connection established, projecting a small but clear image of Captain Jashiro Yukitaki. His kind face appeared tired, new lines evident around his eyes that spoke of recent difficulties managing his chronic illness alongside increased responsibilities. Rukia, he greeted warmly. I'm relieved to see you well. Your signal indicates you're within an Arankar stronghold. Yes, Captain. Cheer Harribel's primary compound in northeastern Hueco Mundo. She confirmed. The situation is complicated. Concisely, she outlined what she'd discovered, the pattern of rifts, the corrupted entities, and most significantly, Naruto Uzumaki's presence and claims about dimensional convergence. Yukitaki listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly troubled. This confirms Captain Kuretsuchi's worst theories, he said when she finished. The research division detected energy patterns suggesting a coordinated weakening of dimensional barriers, but the purpose remained unclear. A pathway for this, Kagaya. Entity would explain the specific configuration. Captain, what is Soul Society's official position on this threat? Rukia asked, choosing her words carefully. Politics within the Gote 13H had grown increasingly factionalized since Aizen's defeat and the revelation of the Soul King's true nature. Am I authorized to form a substantive alliance with Harribel's Arankar? Yukataki's express. Sion revealed his awareness of her unspoken concerns. The Captain Commander has declared this a priority transcendent threat, authorized full cooperation with non-hostile entities regardless of classification. He leaned closer to the projection. However, not all captains shared this pragmatic view. Captain Sui Feng and the Onmitsukido believe any cooperation with Hollows represents unacceptable compromise. And my brother? Rukia asked, unable to keep concern from her voice. A shadow crossed Yukataki's face. Captain Kuchiki maintains public neutrality while privately supporting the Captain Commander's position. But be warned, Central 46 has taken direct interest in these events. They've authorized a separate investigative team led by Captain Byakuya himself to enter Hawako Mundo within the next 72 hours. Rukia's breath caught. My brother is coming here. With what mandate? Officially, to assess the dimensional threat and provide reinforcement. Yukataki's careful phrasing revealed volumes. Unofficially, to evaluate your judgment regarding this Naruto Uzumaki and determine whether his presence represents opportunity or catastrophic risk. Politics Rukia thought bitterly. Even facing dimensional collapse, we cannot escape bureaucratic power games. Aloud, she asked, what is your counsel, Captain? Yukataki's expression softened. Trust your instincts, Rukia. You've demonstrated exceptional judgment in previous crises. If this Naruto truly possesses knowledge and abilities that could counter the dimensional threat, securing his cooperation is paramount. Regardless of Central 46's reservations about otherworldly influences. Understood. Rukia bowed formally. I should inform Harribel of my brother's impending arrival. Surprising an Espada level Ankar with a captain-class Shinigami delegation would undoubtedly deteriorate our tentative cooperation. Agreed. Transparency serves our interests in this matter. Yukataki's image flickered slightly as he shifted. One final thing, Rukia. Captain Kuritsuchi mentioned something disturbing about these rifts. The spiritual pressure signatures show traces of Quincy Ryutsu. Rukia straightened, alarm rippling through her. Quincy. But Yuacha's defeat was absolute. The remaining Quincy have maintained strict neutrality under Ishida's leadership. Indeed. Which suggests either rogue Quincy involvement or, Yukataki hesitated, or something masquerading as Quincy energy to confuse our analysis, Rukia finished, mind racing through implications. I'll investigate while maintaining appropriate caution. After concluding the communication, Rukia remained in meditation position, processing the new complications. Captain Kuchiki's imminent arrival added significant pressure to an already volatile situation. While she trusted her brother implicitly, his adherence to law and order occasionally blinded him to necessary exceptions during crises. More concerning was the Quincy energy signature. The potential involvement of a third major spiritual faction would exponentially complicate their response. The last Quincy War had nearly destroyed Soul Society, even a fraction of that conflict reigniting during a dimensional crisis could prove catastrophic. A soft knock interrupted her contemplation. Rising gracefully, Rukia slid Soda no Shirayuki back into its sheath before opening the door to find Naruto standing outside, his expression serious. Sorry to disturb you, he said without preamble, but we have a situation. Harribel's scouts have detected a large force moving toward La Marea, Arankar. Primarily from Grimjow's faction, but accompanied by several corrupted entities. Rukia immediately shifted to combat readiness, checking her Zanpakuto and equipment. How many? What classification? At least 30 Arankar, former numeros mostly, and 3 larger corrupted hollows exhibiting the same god tree integration we saw earlier. He paused, studying her reaction. Harribel is mobilizing her forces but suggested I inform you directly. She believes this may be the first coordinated attack by a corrupted faction. Meaning the infection has spread to organized Arankar groups. Not just random hollows, Rukia concluded grimly. This significantly accelerates our timeline. I was just contacting Soul Society. Additional Shinigami forces are already en route to Hueco Mundo, including my brother, Captain Kuchiki. If Naruto was concerned about more Shinigami arriving, he didn't show it. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. More allies could be helpful, assuming. Gee, they don't complicate the political situation further. That's a generous assumption, Rukia replied dryly. Soul Society politics make hollow territorial disputes look straightforward by comparison. She moved toward the door. We should join Harribel immediately. If this attack is coordinated, it may be a diversion for something else. As they hurried through the corridors of La Marea, Rukia noticed the compound shifting to war footing with impressive efficiency. Defensive barriers activated, transforming previously decorative water features into strategic moats charged with spiritual pressure. Arrancar moved with disciplined purpose to predetermined positions, communication systems humming with activity. You've fought alongside Shinigami before, Naruto observed as they approached the command center. Any tactical suggestions for combining our forces effectively? Rukia appreciated his pragmatism. Shinigami excel at precision strikes and Kido-based containment, while AR typically deliver overwhelming force with less control. I suggest I focus on disrupting the corrupted entity's coordination while Arrancar forces engage the main group. And me? He asked. You're our wild card, she replied honestly. Your abilities don't follow established patterns from either world. You'd be most effective responding to unexpected developments and countering corruption ASED techniques that neither Shinigami nor Arrancar have experience with. Naruto grinned, a flash of genuine pleasure at her tactical assessment. I do specialize in the unexpected. They entered THE command center to find Harribel already directing operations, her usual calm demeanor focused into razor-sharp battlefield command. She acknowledged their arrival with a brief nod. The enemy force approaches from the southwest. She informed them without preamble. Their formation suggests standard Arrancar attack protocols with corrupted entities in support positions. Unusual for Grimmjow, he typically favors direct assault. Because it's not really Grimmjow in command, Naruto suggested, studying the tactical display. The corruption is influencing their strategy. Where is Grimmjow himself? Unknown, Harribel replied, not detected among the approaching force. Rukia stepped forward, examining the display with professional assessment. These movement patterns, they're hurting something. She pointed to irregularities in the formation. See how they maintain this specific configuration despite terrain challenges. They're creating a mobile containment field. Harribel's eyes narrowed, transporting something they don't fully control. Or someone, Naruto added grimly. Captain Artola entered hurriedly, her white hair disheveled. Lady Harribel, we're detecting a dimensional anomaly within the approaching force. Small but growing rapidly, the implications registered simultaneously with all three leaders. They're bringing a rift directly to us, Rukia stated. Us-ing the containment field to stabilize it during transport. We need to intercept them before they reach the compound, Harribel decided immediately. If a rift opens inside La Marea, the corruption could spread throughout our water systems and crystal infrastructure. Agreed, Rukia said, drawing her Zanpakuto. We should establish a defensive perimeter approximately 2 kilometers out, forcing engagement away from your stronghold. Quote, Naruto nodded. I'll create shadow clones to establish a surveillance network. If this is a diversion, we'll know immediately if other forces approach from different directions. The efficiency with which the three leaders, Arrancar, Shinigami, and otherworldly shinobi, coordinated their response would have astounded observers from any of their respective worlds. Within minutes, a battle plan formed that leveraged each faction's strengths while minimizing traditional vulnerabilities. Harribel dispatched her forces in 3 waves, an advance team to slow the enemy approach, a main battle group led by herself and her Fracken, and a reserve contingent protecting La Marea itself. Rukia would accompany the main battle group, while Naruto created a La response unit of shadow clones that could reinforce any position as needed. As they moved to their positions, Rukia found herself alongside Harribel, flash step matching the Arrancar's Sonito with practiced precision. Despite their historical enmity, a professional respect had begun forming between them, the mutual recognition of capable warriors facing common threat. Your tactical assessment was accurate, Harribel noted as they flash stepped across the desert. Few Shinigami understand Arrancar battle doctrine with such clarity. I make a point of studying potential adversaries, Rukia replied neutrally. Knowledge frequently determines survival. Indeed. A pause, then, you fought alongside the human Kurosaki. Nell speaks highly of your actions during the Winter War. Rukia's stride faltered almost imperceptibly. Nell's memory of those events may be compromised by her condition. My actions were dictated by circumstance, not ideology. As are most meaningful choices. Harribel's tone suggested more understanding than Rukia found comfortable from an espada. They arrived at the designated perimeter, a ridge of crystalline formations providing natural cover while off. Earring clear sightlines across the approaching plain. Apache, Mila Rose, and Sung Sun positioned themselves in triangular formation around Harribel, while Naruto created dozens of shadow clones that dispersed in golden flashes to establish their surveillance network. The approaching enemy force became visible on the horizon, a dark mass moving with unnatural synchronization across the white sands of Hueco Mundo. Even at distance, the corruption was evident in their movements, too uniform, too mechanized for typical Arrancar who prized individual combat prowess. Something's wrong, Rukia murmured, her hand tightening on Soda no Shirayuki. Their spiritual pressure feels muffled, contained. Naruto, standing beside her, nodded grimly. It's like they're being puppeted. Similar to a Tekken. IQ from my world called Edo Tensei, reanimated bodies controlled by external will. The implications chilled Rukia. Arrancar should be immune to such control. Their evolved hollow nature specifically resists external domination. Unless the corruption fundamentally alters that nature, Harribel suggested, her voice hardening. God's tree fragments don't just enhance power, they override autonomy. As the enemy force drew nearer, the extent of corruption became horrifyingly clear. The Arrancar's masks had changed, black veins spreading across their white surfaces and down their bodies. Our movements possessed mechanical precision, lacking the predatory grace characteristic of their kind. Most disturbing were their eyes, uniformly blank except for faint red patterns reminiscent of the Rinne Sharingan Naruto had described. At the center of their formation floated a pulsating sphere of darkness approximately 8 feet in diameter, unmistakably a contained dimensional rift, stabilized by corrupted spiritual pressure from its escorts. Soda no Shirayuki, Rukia commanded softly. Her Zanpakuto responded instantly, transforming into its released state, pure white blade with long ribbon flowing from the pommel. The temperature around her dropped precipitously as her ice-based spiritual pressure manifested. Harribel drew her massive sword but didn't immediately release her resurrection. We should attempt communication first. Some may retain enough consciousness to be reached. Naruto created a single shadow clone. I'll send this one forward. If they're still capable of independent thought, they might respond differently to me than to either of you. The clone approached the advancing formation, stopping at a safe distance with hands raised in peaceful gesture. We know you're being influenced by corruption from another world, it called out clearly. We can help remove it if you'll stand down. The corrupted Arrancar halted with disturbing synchronicity. For a moment, hope flickered that communication might be possible. Then, without warning, all 30 simultaneously opened their mouths and fired seros directly at the clone, not the normal various-colored energy beams of Arrancar, but sickly black projectiles threaded with red energy. The clone dispersed in an explosion of golden particles as the barrage struck, its memories instantly transferring to the original Naruto. Well, that answers the question of peaceful resolution, he muttered. They're completely under control, and those weren't normal seros, they contained corrupted chakra. Then we have no choice, Harribel declared. Raising her sword, Hunt, Tiburon. The release of her resurrection sent a heart-shaped surge of water-like spiritual pressure skyward before condensing around her form. As the water receded, she stood transformed. Shark-like armor covering her previously exposed skin, weapon merged with her arm into a massive blade resembling a shark's tooth. Simultaneously, Rukia began the precise movements of her most powerful dance. Some no mai, Tsukishiro. A circle of white light appeared beneath a cluster of approaching corrupted Arrancar, then erupted upward in a pillar of ice that froze everything within its circumference, including the air itself. The battle erupted with explosive force as Harribel's advance forces engaged the corrupted Arrancar. Despite being outnumbered, The defenders fought with coordination and purpose against enemies whose movements, while perfectly synchronized, lacked tactical creativity. Naruto leapt directly toward the central rift, golden chakra swirling around him as he entered a modified sage mode adapted to Hueco Mundo's spiritual environment. I'll try to seal the rift before whatever's coming through can fully materialize. 6 corrupted Arankar intercepted him, moving with unnatural speed to form a defensive perimeter around the pulsating darkness. Naruto created additional shadow clones that engaged them with Rasengan variants, the spiraling spheres of energy now incorporating Hueco Mundo's spiritual particles to devastating effect. Rukia flash-stepped through the battlefield with practiced precision, her white blade leaving trails of frost in its wake. Tsugi no Mai, Hakuren. A massive wave of ice erupted from her sword, freezing dozens of corrupted Arankar mid-attack. Unlike normal opponents, however, they didn't shatter. Instead, black energy began pulsing within the ice, gradually melting it from within. Conventional attacks only temporarily disable them, she called out, adjusting her strategy. We need something that counters the corruption specifically. Harribel swept her massive blade through the air. Cascada. A surging wave of pressurized water crashed into the enemy ranks, temporarily dispersing their formation. Naruto, focus on the rift. We'll maintain containment. Responding to her command, Apache, Mila Rose, and Sung Sun released their own resurrections, transforming into their chimeric battle forms. They moved in perfect triangular formation, alternating attacks to create continuous pressure on the corrupted forces. Naruto fought his way closer to the central rift, which had begun expanding rapidly. Through the widening tear, something massive was taking shape, a writhing mass of branch-like tendrils surrounding a central eye reminiscent of the Rinne Sharingan. We need to close it now, he shouted, hands already forming the complex seals for a dimensional containment technique. Rukia flash-stepped to his position, placing herself between him and approaching attackers. I'll cover you. How much time do you need? 30 seconds to prepare the seal, he replied, golden energy gathering around his hands. You'll have it. Rukia raised her sword vertically before her face, her expression becoming transcendently serene despite the chaos surrounding them. Bankai, Haka no to game. An explosion of white spiritual pressure erupted around her, as temperature plummeted to impossible levels. Her Shinigami uniform transformed into a flowing white kimono, her hair and skin bleaching to pure white as frost patterns spread across her entire being. Most dramatically, a crystalline lotus flower materialized behind her, radiating cold so intense it froze spiritual particles in the air itself. The corrupted Arankar nearest to her stopped moving entirely, their forms crystallizing from within as absolute zero temperatures invaded their spiritual structure. The freezing effect spread outward in concentric circles, creating a 30-second win. Tao of absolute stillness around Naruto's position. In that perfect moment of frozen time, Naruto completed his sealing technique. 6-path sealing method. Dimensional boundary restoration. Gold. End chains erupted from the ground around the rift, wrapping around the pulsating darkness and the partially emerged entity within it. Unlike his previous sealings, this technique didn't attempt to contain the rift but to forcibly close it, using the natural structure of dimensional boundaries to reject the foreign intrusion. The rift convulsed violently as the sealing chains tightened, the emerging entity letting out a silent scream as it was forced back through the closing tier. With a sound like reality itself tearing and mending simultaneously, the rift collapsed inward, leaving nothing but dissipating spiritual particles. As the rift closed, the corrupted Arankar suddenly faltered, their perfect synchronization dissolving into confused, jerky movements. The black veins across their masks receded slightly, and several collapsed entirely as the controlling influence weakened. Rukia's Bankai receded, the extreme technique having reached its time limit. She staggered slightly, the SSIVE spiritual expenditure taking its toll. Without comment, Naruto moved to support her, his hand on her arm providing stabilizing energy that she felt flow into her depleted reserves. They were being controlled directly through the rift, he observed, watching as the corrupted Arankar either fled in disoriented panic or fell unconscious. With the connection severed, the corruption is weakening. Harribel approached, her resurrection still active though the worst of the fighting had concluded. We should capture those who remain for study. If the corruption can be reversed, it can, Naruto affirmed with certainty. The god tree's influence is powerful but not irreversible, especially when the source is removed. As Harribel's forces secured the battlefield and began collecting fallen corrupted Arankar, Rukia found herself studying Naruto with new appreciation. His sealing technique had accomplished what would have required multiple captain-level Shinigami working in cons. RT, and he'd done it with apparent ease despite the chaotic battle conditions. "Your abilities are remarkable," she commented as they walked back toward La Marea, Harribel and her Fracken moving ahead to organize the aftermath. Soul Society has extensive knowledge of dimensional mechanics, yet nothing approaching your sealing techniques. Naruto smiled modestly. "Where I come from, the Uzumaki clan specialized in sealing jutsu before they were scattered. I'm actually not that skilled compared to true masters like my mother was. I just have unusually large chakra reserves to power the techniques." "You're being unnecessarily humble," Rukia observed with characteristic directness. "I've witnessed captain-level Shinigami struggle with far simpler dimensional manipulations. Your large reserves would classify as catastrophically vast by our standards." He laughed, a surprisingly warm sound in the otherwise somber aftermath of battle. "Maybe our worlds measure power differently. In mine, I was considered something of a knucklehead who succeeded through determination rather than skill." "A familiar archetype," Rukia replied with the ghost of a smile. "I once knew someone similar. Though he eventually proved far more capable than anyone anticipated." "This Ichigo that Nell mentioned." "Yes." Rukia's expression softened momentarily before professional composure reasserted itself. "Those circumstances differ significantly. Ichigo was human with latent Shinigami heritage. You are." She hesitated, searching for appropriate classification. "Just a shinobi very far from home," he supplied good-naturedly. "I doubt anything about you has ever been." "Just anything," she countered, violet eyes assessing him with newfound interest. "Particularly not to warrant multiple diamond scions potentially restructuring themselves around your arrival." Their conversation paused as they reached La Marea's perimeter, where Artola approached with urgent news. "Lady Harribel requests your immediate presence." During the battle, another scouting team discovered something significant to the southwest, an ancient structure revealed by recent spiritual disturbances. "What kind of structure?" Naruto asked. "A temple," Artola replied, her clinical tone betraying unusual excitement. "Predating Los Noches, possibly predating recorded hollow history entirely. And it contains inscriptions that match energy patterns emanating from you, Naruto Uzumaki." Rukia and Naruto exchanged startled glances. "How is that possible?" Rukia demanded. "He's from another dimensional system entirely." "Unknown," Artola admitted, "but the correlation is unmistakable. Lady Harribel believes immediate investigation is warranted, particularly given the attempted rift incursion." Within an hour, a small expedition had assembled. Harribel, her 3 Fracken, Rukia, Naruto, and 2 of Artola's research specialists equipped with recording and analysis equipment. The temple's location lay approximately 50 kilometers southwest of La Marea, in a region of Hueco Mundo characterized by unusually deep spiritual resonance. As they traveled, Rukia maintained professional detachment despite growing unease. Ancient structures in spiritual realms invariably contained dangerous knowledge or sealed powers. Her experiences in Soul Society had taught this lesson repeatedly. Moreover, the coincidental discovery during their battle suggested possible manipulation. Perhaps they were being deliberately led to this location. She shared these concerns with Naruto as they flash-stepped across the endless desert. "The timing is suspicious. This attack may have been designed specifically to draw our attention to the temple's location." "I had the same thought," he admitted. "But even knowing it might be a trap, we need the information. If there's connection between my world and yours predating my arrival, it could explain why the dimensional barriers are specifically vulnerable now." They arrived at coordinates provided by the scouting team to find an extraordinary sight. A massive sinkhole had opened in Hueco Mundo's desert floor, revealing ancient structure beneath the sand, a temple complex. Constructed from black stone veined with crystalline material unlike the white formations common throughout the realm. The architecture followed no style Rukia recognized, with angles and proportions that seemed intentionally disorienting. As if designed to be viewed from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Most remarkable was the temple's entrance, a massive doorway flanked by statues combining hollow mask elements with features Naruto identified as similar to the stone faces of Hokage Mountain in his world. Above the entrance, inscriptions in no language Rukia recognized glowed with faint golden light similar to Naruto's chakra when activated. This shouldn't exist, Harribel stated flatly, her usual composure momentarily fractured by genuine surprise. Hueco Mundo has no recorded civilization beyond Los Noches and scattered hollow encampments. Nothing capable of constructing this. Maybe it's not from Hueco Mundo originally, Naruto suggested, studying the inscriptions with growing recognition. These symbols, they're not identical to my world's writing, but they share root patterns with ancient Uzumaki sealing script. Rukia activated a recording Kido, capturing detailed images of the inscriptions while maintaining vigilant awareness of their surroundings. We should proceed with extreme caution. Ancient temples rarely welcome visitors warmly. They entered the structure in tight formation. Harribel and Naruto in front, Fracken and research specialists in the center, Rukia guarding the rear. The interior illuminated automatically as they proceeded, crystal veins in the walls glowing with soft golden light that responded to their presence. The first chamber revealed wall carvings depicting a historical narrative, primitive hollows gathering around a central figure who appeared neither hollow nor Shinigami but something beyond both. Successive panels showed this figure teaching the hollows, organizing them into societal structures, and demonstrating Tekken IQs reminiscent of both Kido and Ninjutsu. The Hollow King, Sung Sun whispered, temporarily replacing her usual sarcasm. I thought it merely legend, a mythical figure who supposedly united Hueco Mundo in ancient times before disappearing. Not mythical, one of Artola's researchers observed, scanning the walls with specialized equipment. These depictions are over 20,000 years old based on spiritual decay patterns. They proceeded deeper into the temple, each chamber revealing more elaborate carvings showing the evolution of Hollow Society under this king's guidance. Most disturbing were depictions of the king confronting entities emerging from rifts identical to those currently appearing throughout Hueco Mundo, rifts from which emerged branch-like growths unmistakably similar to god tree fragments. In the central chamber, they discovered what could only be described as a prophecy wall, a massive circular carving surrounding a raised dais. The carvings depicted cycles of invasion and sealing, with recurring imagery of rifts opening between worlds and beings with Rinne Sharingan eyes attempting to consume all spiritual existence. Most shocking was the central panel, which showed a figure with spiky hair surrounded by golden energy chains, standing between worlds to seal a horned goddess-like entity. The figure bore 3 distinct whisker marks on each cheek, and was accompanied by what appeared to be a multi-tailed fox entity. That's me, Naruto whispered, stunned recognition evident in his voice. And Kurama. But this carving is thousands of years old. How could it possibly? Prophecy, Rukia stated, her Shinigami training providing context for such phenomena. Similar predictions exist in Soul Society's restricted archives, the Okayan Prophecy that foretold Aizen's rebellion and the Quincy return. Time flows differently between dimensions, sometimes allowing glimpses of potential futures to manifest in the past. Harribel studied the prophecy wall with intense focus. The inscriptions, can you decipher them? Naruto approached the wall, tracing the symbols with growing comprehension. It's like a hybrid language, part ancient Uzumaki script, part something else. It speaks of the Golden Sage, who walks between worlds, binding the rabbit goddess when she attempts to consume all dimensions. The rabbit goddess, Rukia questioned. Kagaya Otsutsuki. Naruto clarified grimly. In my world's legends, she was sometimes called the rabbit goddess because of her horns and third eye. One of Artola's researchers activated a different scanning device, which projected a 3-dimensional model of energy flows within the temple. There's an active power source beneath the dais, some kind of sealed chamber. Carefully, they examined the dais itself, discovering activation panels that responded to spiritual pressure. After careful analysis confirmed no obvious traps, Naruto placed his hand on the central panel, channeling small amount of chakra into it. The entire temple trembled as the dais slid aside, revealing stairs descending into darkness. From below emanated golden light and palpable spiritual pressure, ancient but powerful. Neither hollow nor Shinigami in nature. We should proceed together, Harribel decided after brief consideration. Whatever awaits below clearly connects to our current crisis. The stairway led to a small, perfectly circular chamber containing nothing but a pedestal upon which rested a crystalline sphere approximately the size of a fist. Within the sphere floated what appeared to be a scroll sealed with a symbol combining the spiral of the Uzumaki clan with hollow mask elements. A message, Naruto realized, approaching cautiously. Left by whoever built this place, this hollow king who somehow knew about my world. Or who came from your world, Rukia suggested, the implication staggering. Perhaps you aren't the first to cross between our dimensional systems. As Naruto carefully lifted the sphere from its pedestal, the crystal dissolved into golden particles that were absorbed into his hand. The scroll remained, hovering in air momentarily before unrolling itself. Writing appeared on the previously blank parchment, symbols flowing into existence as if being written by invisible hand. As they formed, Naruto began translating. To the golden sage who walks between worlds, if you read these words, the convergence has begun again. The rabbit goddess seeks to unite all dimensions under her consumption, as she has attempted in cycles throughout existence. I, who as called King of Hollows but began as shinobi of the Otsutsuki clan, fled her first awakening through dimensional tear similar to what brought you here. Naruto paused, visibly stunned by this revelation before continuing. I found this realm of hunger and emptiness, recognized its potential, and guided its evolution toward purpose rather than mindless consumption. But the goddess cannot be aped eternally. Her influence seeps between dimensional barriers, corrupting and preparing for her full manifestation. You who bear the legacy of the Sage of Six Paths must complete what I could only temporarily accomplish, the permanent separation of dimensional systems to prevent complete convergence. Beneath Los Noches lies the original Hollow Throne, constructed at dimensional nexus point. When all rifts align, the throne becomes conduit for either separation or unification of all worlds. The choice will be yours, Golden Sage. Choose wisely, for all existence depends upon it. The scroll umbled into golden dust as Naruto finished reading, leaving them in stunned silence. Finally, Rukia spoke, her voice carefully controlled despite the monumental implications. An Otsutsuki clan member built Hollow Society, she summarized. After escaping from your world during Kagaya's first attempt at dimensional convergence. And now history repeats with your arrival. Not just repeats, Harribel observed with characteristic insight. Escalates. The rifts are more numerous, the corruption more aggressive. Whatever balance existed between our worlds is deteriorating rapidly. Naruto's expression had grown distant, as if consulting internally with the fox entity he carried. After a moment, he focused again on his companions. This explains why the dimensional boundaries between our worlds are specifically vulnerable. They've been breached before, creating permanent weak points that Kagaya's influence can target. And this hollow throne beneath Los Noches is the primary nexus, Rukia added. Tactical mind already assessing implications. Which means controlling Los Noches becomes strategically essential. A complication, Harribel stated. Los Noches currently houses multiple warring factions. None with complete control. Grimmjow claims the central sectors, the Exequias hold the western quadrant, and Aizen loyalists maintain scattered strongholds throughout. Then we need to unite them. Naruto said with simple determination that belied the political impossibility of the suggestion. Or at least secure access to this throne before the rifts fully align. Rukia Saint smiled at his optimism despite herself. Uniting Urankar factions who have spent years trying to destroy each other, while simultaneously coordinating with Shinigami who have historically exterminated hollows. All before dimensional collapse. You have ambitious goals, Naruto Uzumaki. To her surprise, Harribel nodded agreement. Ambition may be precisely what our situation requires. Conventio. Null approaches cannot address unconventional threats. As they ascended from the temple, Rukia found herself reassessing everything she had believed about Hueco Mundo's history and Soul Society's understanding of dimensional mechanics. If the ancient writings were accurate, the entire spiritual world system had been influenced by refugees from Naruto's dimension millennia ago, a connection that dated any recorded history in Soul Society itself. More immediately concerning was the strategic importance this placed on Los Noches. When her brother arrived with his Shinigami contingent, they would inevitably prioritize securing the Hollow Throne, potentially triggering renewed conflict with Arrancar factions at precisely the moment unity was most needed. "We should return to La Marea immediately," she suggested as they exited the temple. "I need to update Soul Society on these developments before my brother's expedition arrives. If we can establish formal diplomatic protocol regarding Las Noches access, we might prevent unnecessary conflict." "Agreed," Harribel said. "I will also contact the other faction leaders, those who can still be reasoned with. Recent corruption attacks may make them more receptive to cooperation, however temporary." As they prepared to depart, Naruto lingered, gazing back at the ancient structure with troubled expression. "Something still doesn't make sense," he murmured. "Why would an Otsutsuki clan member help Hollows build civilization? They typically viewed other species as resources to be harvested, not societies to be developed." "Perhaps Gthy isolation changed their perspective," Rukia suggested. "Or maybe they recognized that organized Hollows provided better defense against Kagaya's potential return than scattered, mindless entities." "Maybe," but his tone suggested continued doubt. "I can't shake the feeling we're missing something important, some connection between the Otsutsuki, Hollows, and the dimensional system itself." Before they could discuss further, one of Artola's researchers called out in alarm. The temple had begun sinking back into the sand, the entire structure receding into Hueco Mundo's depths as if being intentionally hidden once more. "It served its purpose," Harribel observed dispassionately, delivering its message to its intended recipient. Rukia studied Naruto's profile as he watched the temple disappear, golden hair catching Hueco Mundo's eternal moonlight, blue eyes reflecting complex emotions beneath surface determination. In that moment, she understood with perfect clarity why this strange visitor from another dimension had been prophesied thousands of years ago. He embodied something increasingly rare in any world: genuine conviction uncorrupted by cynicism, power tempered by compassion, and the simple, unshakable determination to protect rather than dominate. Whether such qualities would prove sufficient against the coming convergence remained to be seen. But for the first time since discovering the dimensional rifts, Rukia felt something like hope stirring beneath her professional caution. She glanced at Harribel and found the Arrancar leader watching Naruto with simul-ar assessment, the recognition of something exceptional regardless of its dimensional origin. "We should move quickly," Rukia said, breaking the moment of contemplation. The temple's message was clear: time grows short as the rifts align. As they stepped back toward La Marea, Rukia found her thoughts returning to the prophecy wall's central image: Naruto standing between worlds, neither fully belonging to nor fully rejected by any. A bridge personified, a linchpin in reality's structure. The golden sage she mused, casting another glance at the shinobi moving effortlessly alongside a Rincar and Shinigami with equal comfort. Perhaps the title is more apt than even he realizes. Chapter 3 End. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.